Hey guys, tonight we're doing something unwise. You've slipped out of the modern world and landed smack in the middle of a Victorian snowstorm. Think foggy streets, gaslights flickering like they're holding on for dear life, and a chill in the air that could freeze your eyebrows clean off. To make things worse, no gas, as in, no heating, no hot baths, no cosy radiators purring in the corner. Yeah, you probably won't survive this, but it's okay, that's what we're here for. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, what city are you in, and what time are you listening to this? I want to imagine exactly where you're tucked in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you is the silence. Victorian London, usually bustling with the rhythmic clatter of hooves and gossip leaking out of every window, is muffled. Snow doesn't just fall, it swallows sound. The thick flakes drop like sleepy feathers, coating everything in a relentless white crust. It's late December 1880, and London is dealing with the kind of snowstorm that makes newspapers switch from talking about royal affairs to how to unstick your horse from a snowbank. You stand at the edge of Fleet Street, shivering through the layers you thought would be enough. Woolen overcoat? Check. Gloves that barely fit? Check. Confidence? Rapidly evaporating. You don't even know how you got here. Maybe a dream, maybe some weirder time travel gone sideways. Doesn't matter. You're here now, and your breath is forming full sentences in the frozen air. Victorian London isn't built for blizzards, despite what the romantic paintings say. The buildings are tall and narrow, often covered in soot. The alleys twist like they were drawn in a hurry, and the snow collects in slush-filled trap and woods that wait for your modern boots to betray you, which they do, twice in the first 5 minutes. You pass a grocer who's trying to sweep snow from his awning with a broom made of actual twigs. He gives you a look, part pity, part suspicion. You're not dressed like him, too clean, too new. He probably assumes you're some lost aristocrat's cousin who wandered away from their manor and forgot that snow kills. As you trudge onward, the snow starts coming in sideways. There's wind now, biting, wet wind that slaps your cheeks red and whispers ancient curses into your ears. You duck into a side street for shelter, nearly colliding with a young woman struggling to pull a heavy coal scuttle up the steps to a brick townhouse. She doesn't say a word, just grunts and keeps dragging. Her sleeves are soaked. Her bonnet is crusted with ice. This isn't the kind of winter where people smile at each other and make snowmen. This is survival mode winter. The kind where every action has a cost in warmth. The street lamps are dimming, gas pressures dropping across the city. You don't realise it yet, but that flickering glow is your last little tether to the modern world. In about an hour, the entire neighbourhood will be without light or heat. The gasworks, overwhelmed by frozen valves and frozen workers, will all but shut down. Not for a minute or two, but for days. You consider checking into an inn, but most are packed beyond capacity, crammed with families trying to escape their cold stone flats. The ones that still have heat are charging eye-watering prices, and you're broke. Victorian broke, meaning your options are find shelter or learn what a hypothermic Victorian ghost feels like. You spot a small church up the road, its tall steeple rising like a lighthouse in the white fog. A few people huddle on the steps, wrapped in patchwork shawls and wool scarves pulled so tight they barely look human. You join them, half expecting to be chased off, but one of them, an old man with a nose like a hawk's beak, nods silently and scoots over. The doors are locked. Of course they are, but the overhang at least blocks the wind. For now, that's enough. You sit down beside Tim, instantly regretting it as the cold seeps into your bones like damp smoke. A horse clatters past, barely visible in the haze, its hooves clopping unevenly on cobblestone half hidden by snow. The cart behind it carries what looks like firewood. The driver wears goggles and a scarf wrapped 3 times around his face, probably delivering heat to the lucky few. The man beside you leans in and mutters, "No gas again, pipes burst on Thursday, said it'd be fixed. Still waiting." You nod, unsure what to say. This city runs on gas. Without it there's no light, no cook fires, no heat in the fancier homes. You're not even sure if the water pumps will last. He leans back and closes his eyes. Always happens when it's coldest. You'd think they'd planned better. And you think, would they though? Victorian infrastructure is, let's just say it's not built on optimism. London is massive by this time, teeming with millions, most of whom are barely scraping by. There are some innovations. Pneumatic tubes, gas lamps, even early telephone lines if you're fancy. But none of that matters when snow turns every road into a treacherous slide, and freezing temperatures bring industrial power to its knees. People start gathering around a woman who's lighting a candle. The glow is tiny but mesmerizing. She shields it from the wind with her shawl, and others begin cupping hands around it. A shared flicker of hope. A small child offers you half a biscuit. You take it, not because you're hungry, but because it's warm. It had been in her pocket, near her skin. A moment later, you give it back. She beams. And that's when it hits you. This isn't just about surviving the cold, it's about surviving each other. Without gas, without resources, without the luxury of warmth on demand. The snowstorm is just the first problem. The real issue is how long people can stay kind before frostbite or desperation makes them mean. You pull your coat tighter. Your hands are starting to go numb, and your modern skin has never known real cold. But this is only the beginning. And let's be honest, you've made worse choices. It's been hours now, though it's impossible to tell the time without a watch or a phone, or even the sun. The grey sky hangs low like a ceiling sagging under the weight of snow that just won't quit. And if you thought the cold was bad before, it's now slipping from unpleasant into something more sinister. Your breath fogs in the air and doesn't seem to move away, just floats like it's too tired to vanish. Every inhale stings your nostrils. Every exhale feels stolen from a dwindling heat source you didn't even realize your body was protecting. The group around the church steps starts to break apart. One by one, they peel off like frost-covered petals. Some head for alleyways, others toward dim yellow windows in the distance, homes or pubs maybe, or anywhere with the possibility of heat. You're on your own again, and that brief moment of shared humanity feels like it happened in a different timeline. You try moving just to get the blood flowing. At first it helps, but then your boots start to betray you again. The cobblestones are hidden under slush now, a mix of snow, soot, and whatever disgusting secrets Victorian streets are holding beneath the surface. You slip, catch yourself, then slip again, this time grabbing onto a lamppost for balance. The metal burns your hand with cold. Gaslights are dimming fast. By now, most of the lamplighters have given up. Normally they'd make their rounds with long poles, lighting each post by hand, but the city's in a slow collapse. The gas company, some private corporation run by men with waistcoats and no chill, can't pump enough through the pipes to keep the pressure stable. Frozen regulators, burst mains, workers who can't even make it in. And even if the gas could flow, there's no guarantee your neighbourhood would be first in line. So here's the reality check. You're in the middle of a city designed around a single fuel source, and that source has ghosted you. It's like being in a blackout, except with added historical panic and no flashlight app. You duck into an alley, mostly just to get out of the wind. It smells vivid. A heady mix of rotting vegetables, coal smoke, and the distinct aroma of horse dung softened by snow. Romantic, right? But even in this grim nook, there's evidence of life. A small orange glow flickers behind a pile of crates. You inch closer, hoping for heat, but prepare for disappointment. It's a trash fire, literally. A group of street kids has piled up scraps of paper and whatever burnable material they could find. The flames are pathetic but warm, and the kids, dirty, skinny, hollow-cheeked, are guarding it like a dragon horde. One of them, maybe 12 years old, sees you and gestures with his chin. "You want to warm up, mister? You better have something to burn." You fish through your coat pockets and come up with a bus ticket from 2025, a paperclip, and a wrapped peppermint. Useless. You crouch beside them anyway, and miraculously they let you stay. Maybe because they think you're an idiot. Or maybe because they know the storm's not picky about who it kills. Their leader, a girl with freckles and a cap too big for her head, stirs the fire with a bent piece of iron. "Ain't never seen it come down like this," she says. "Last time it got this bad, the Thames froze." You blink. The Thames? Whole river. Froze up solid. They had skating and puppet shows on the ice, but that was years back. She shrugs. "We'll be lucky if the coal men even show this week." And that's the problem. Without gas, everyone's turning to coal, and fast. But coal delivery is a logistical nightmare in this weather. The narrow streets are clogged with snowdrifts. Horses can't pull carts. The upper classes might still have their reserves, but the working poor? They're burning broken chairs and floorboards just to keep the chill back. You notice a boy pulling off his socks to warm them by the flames. His feet are raw, nearly purple. No one says anything. What can you say? The girl looks at you. You got a place to sleep? You hesitate. Not really. She nods like she already knew the answer. Then you better find one before dark. It gets worse then. You wonder how it could get worse. But she's right. You don't want to be outside when the cold deepens and the snow starts to crust into ice. Night is when people stop pretending it's just a bad storm and start realizing it's a siege. So you leave your brief sanctuary and head east. The snow is getting heavier again, the flakes fatter, falling with a weird slowness that makes the world feel like it's underwater. Each step takes real effort now. Your boots sink, your coat soaks up to snow, and your scarf. Well, let's just say it gave up an hour ago. You pass shop windows shuttered with planks, a bakery closed, a tailor's door ajar but no light inside. Even the pubs are quieter than you'd expect. Nobody wants to be out longer than they have to. You try one door after another, but the inns are full or hostile or too expensive. Eventually you find yourself on the stoop of a tenement building, 4 stories of red brick misery with narrow staircases and windows you could shatter just by looking at them too hard. You knock, no answer. You knock again, still nothing. Then, miraculously, the door creaks open a few inches. A child's face peers out, wide-eyed and suspicious. Behind them, the dim glow of candlelight. You hear coughing. So much coughing. A woman appears, thin and tired, her sleeves rolled up over red arms. You sick? You shake your head. Got money? You shake your head again. She sighs. You can sit in the hallway, but don't touch nothing, and if you cough, you're out. Fair enough. You step into the hallway, where the air is fractionally warmer but somehow more oppressive. It smells like wet wool, coal smoke and damp mould. People are sitting on the stairs, hunched under blankets, sharing crusts of bread. A man plays something soft on a harmonica. A baby cries somewhere upstairs. The gas sconces on the walls are dark. Useless. You wedge yourself into a corner and finally let your body rest. Your muscles twitch with the strange ache of prolonged cold. Your fingers burn as they thaw, a good sign maybe, or a warning. Outside, the wind howls again. Snowflakes dance past the cracked window like pale ghosts. And you realize this isn't even the peak of the storm yet. Morning arrives, or at least something like it. There's no real sunrise, just a slow grey light that seeps through the cracked window panes like someone wringing out a dishcloth full of fog. The air hasn't warmed. If anything, it feels colder, more still. You wake with your back against the hallway wall, limbs stiff and head pounding with that deep internal ache that only real cold can deliver. Your breath comes out in slow, ragged clouds. The candle someone left burning overnight is nothing but a stub in a puddle of wax. You've survived the night, barely. The tenement's waking up around you, but there's no cheer in it. No chirping kettles, no lively chatter. Just more coughing. Footsteps that drag instead of step. The soft creak of people unpeeling themselves from shared blankets and damp clothes. You hear someone trying to light a stove on the floor above. A desperate clank and spark of flint. And then a long curse when it doesn't catch. That's when it hits you. Even if people have stoves, they don't mean much without gas. You make your way outside, slipping down the icy steps with the grace of a sleep-deprived giraffe. The snow's deeper now, easily knee-high, and the wind has sculpted it into sharp, unnatural drifts along the buildings. The street is eerily empty again, as if the city is holding its breath. The sky hangs low and white, smothering all sense of time. A few blocks over you see signs of life. A group of men shouting, gesturing wildly near a thick pipe that runs along the curb. You follow the sound, squinting into the wind, and catch sight of a gas company wagon, horse-drawn and already half-frozen. 2 uniformed workers are arguing beside an open hatch in the street. "Pressure's gone," one says, his face flushed and red. "Main lines burst from the cold. Ain't no flow to this whole section." "Then reroute it," the other snaps. "If we don't get it running, half these blocks will freeze by nightfall." You step closer, hoping to glean something useful, but you're just another body in the snow. The men ignore you, kneeling by the hatch and shining a lantern into the dark pit below. That's when you learn your first real lesson of Victorian survival. Infrastructure is fragile, and nobody's coming to save you. The Victorian gas grid was revolutionary for its time. A tangled web of cast iron pipes and street-level valves feeding homes, lamps, factories. But it was also brittle. Temperatures like this make the pipes contract and crack. Water gets in, it freezes. Then boom, no gas, no light, no heat, no nothing. By now, families in nearby homes are waking to find that their grates cold and their stoves unresponsive. Some still have fireplaces if they're lucky. Others just shiver under blankets and hope for a knock at the door from a coal man. But most of the wagons are stalled. Streets like these haven't been cleared. Shovels are in short supply, and the only people moving through the snow reliably are those who absolutely have to, like chimney sweeps, policemen, and desperate folks like you. You remember something the freckled girl by the fire said. The coal men won't come. And she was right. The roads are impassable. The animals pulling those heavy carts are dying in the streets, literally. You pass one on your way toward the docks, a massive draft horse collapsed sideways, ribs heaving, its eyes wide and glassy. A man tries to coax it up, then gives up and starts unstrapping the harness, cursing under his breath. Some buildings have resorted to old tricks. You spot smoke curling from chimneys that shouldn't be in use, makeshift flues reactivated after decades of disuse. A widow leans out her window to knock icicles off the sill with a broom, her breath swirling around her like a ghost. Below, a boy is dragging what looks like a broken chair toward a cellar door, fuel. Without gas, coal is gold, and without coal, people will burn anything. Broken furniture, newspaper, crates. If it can catch fire and give off heat without killing you too quickly, it's fair game. You duck into a side alley and find a pair of women feeding a fire in a steel barrel. They're burning cloth scraps. One of them eyes your coat with obvious calculation. You trade? She asks, her voice scratchy from smoke and cold. You shake your head and keep walking. Because here's the ugly truth. When the gas goes, the system collapses fast. People go from neighbourly to transactional. Warmth becomes currency. Kindness gets frostbite. You pass a grocer's shop where a small crowd has gathered. Faces pressed to the glass. Inside, the shelves are half empty. The few items left, loaves of stale bread, tins of treacle, root vegetables hard as stone, are being guarded like royal jewels. The owner opens the door an inch to shout, "Only families today! 1 loaf each," before slamming it shut again. A woman sobs quietly and turns away, her arms empty and still. The snow falls. By mid-morning, your fingers are screaming at you. The gloves you thought were adequate are soaked through. Your skin feels like it belongs to someone else, someone you've abandoned. You duck under an overhang and stomp your feet, trying to summon heat from your own body, but it's a losing game. A man nearby mutters, "They say the Queen's got coal piled high and warm baths drawn hourly." You look over, he's bundled in layers of rags, his nose black with soot. "They always say that," he grumbles. "We freeze and the palace toasts crumpets over roaring fires." That's the thing about Victorian London. It's not one city. It's several, stacked and jammed and shoved into each other like ill-fitting drawers. The poor freeze while the rich burn mahogany for ambience. One of the more fringe beliefs going around the street right now, at least according to the muttering crowd, is that the gas was sabotaged. Some say it's political, a plot by anti-monarchists. Others whisper that rival companies shut down the valves on purpose to raise prices. None of it is likely, but when you're freezing to death in a coat that feels more like a sponge, you'll believe almost anything if it gives you someone to blame. You wander toward the river, mostly because it's downhill, and you're too cold to argue with gravity. The Thames is half frozen, slabs of ice bobbing like cracked plates on dirty water. There's no skating this year, just thick brown sludge and frostbitten gulls. Barges sit idle, trapped in ice near the wharves. Men in oilskins try hacking at the surface with poles, but it's pointless. You sit down on an overturned crate near the edge and stare at the water. Your teeth are chattering now, not politely but violently, like your jaw is trying to escape your skull. And that's when you realise something terrifying. You can't even smell smoke anymore. It's not because the fires have stopped. It's because your nose has gone numb. You press your fingers against your cheeks, no feeling, your lips, stiff, your legs, still moving sort of, but they feel heavy and clumsy. You're not just cold anymore, you're flirting with hypothermia. You think about the gas workers again, still struggling to fix pipes that were never meant for this kind of weather. About the families waking to cold beds. About the woman who let you into her hallway last night, and whether she had enough to burn this morning. And then you think about the fact that this is just the second day. The storm hasn't let up, the gas is still out, the coal's still not coming, and you're running out of time. By now, the snowstorm feels less like weather and more like a siege. It's not just cold anymore, it's aggressive. It wraps around buildings. It slips under doorways. It clings to your clothes like it's trying to pull you under. The city groans beneath it. Roofs are beginning to sag. Wooden signs hang at strange angles, encrusted with icicles the size of fireplace pokers. Every sound is muffled. Every step is an argument with nature. Your body's in full rebellion, your toes have gone silent, that's never good. Your fingers twitch involuntarily when you try to flex them, and your breath comes out in shallow bursts now, like even your lungs are questioning your life choices. You need heat, now. You spot a plume of smoke in the distance. Not coal smoke, something lighter, more chaotic, and follow it down a side street. The smell hits you before the sight does. Sharp, acrid, oily. It stings your nostrils, and for a brief, insane second, you're happy to feel something again. Then you turn the corner and see it. Someone's burning their mattress in the street. It's fully ablaze, foam and springs blackening as flames lick upward in desperate flickers. A small crowd has gathered around it, not for safety or emergency, but for warmth. The fire dances in their hollow eyes. A boy fans it with what looks like a torn curtain. A man tosses in a wooden leg from a broken table. No one speaks. You edge closer, palms out, feeling the sting of sudden heat against your frozen skin. It's almost too much, like drinking boiling soup after days of cold water. But you don't care. The warmth is immediate, almost religious. It pulses through your arms, your back, your fear, your face. You want to cry, but even your tear ducts feel frozen. A woman beside you snorts. "Not gonna last long," she says, pointing at the fire. "Be ash by sundown. Then what?" You don't have an answer. Nobody does, but no one leaves the fire either. Someone offers you a tin mug with something steaming in it. You hesitate. The woman laughs. "Tea, relax, ain't poisoned, just weak." You take a sip and instantly understand why the Victorians were obsessed with tea. Even when it tastes like boiled wallpaper, it's hot. It matters. It gives your body permission to keep trying. But the mattress won't last. You look around and see others scavenging. A few people are ripping down shutters from an abandoned shop. Someone's breaking apart a piano. They do it with a strange efficiency, as if they've done it before. And maybe they have. This isn't the first time London's been gripped by a storm like this, and it won't be the last. You spot a pair of older men debating over whether to burn an old bookcase. "It's mahogany," one says, offended. "Exactly," the other shoots back. "Burns hot. That's the new value system. Beauty, sentiment, history, worthless. If a ethic can burn, it's useful. If it can't, it's just something else to trip over in the snow." But here's the thing, they're not wrong. In the absence of gas, London's slipping back into a soot-streaked version of itself. A coal-fed monster that eats furniture and spits ash. Even those who once swore off firewood are now tearing up floorboards. It's back to basics, medieval even. You take a mental note. If you make it through this, you're never complaining about a chilly apartment again. You decide to head further south, toward the heart of the city. Maybe you'll find a pub with a working hearth or a factory still pumping heat. The streets grow quieter as you move. The snow's deeper here, and the silence more total. Only the occasional crow caws from a rooftop, its black feathers rimmed in frost. Eventually, you stumble across a grand house at the edge of a square, big windows, gas lamps outside, or rather, former gas lamps. They're all out dark. The brass fixtures look sad now, covered in rime. You knock on the front door, mostly out of curiosity. No answer. You push, and it creaks open. The house is empty. Or not quite. Inside, it's freezing. Your breath fogs instantly. The grand front hall is coated in a fine dusting of snow, blown in through a shattered window on the second floor. There's broken glass crunching underfoot. The portraits on the wall seem to shiver in their frames. This place once had gas in every room. You can tell by the wall fixtures, elegant sconces with little glass tulip shades. Now they're just decorations. Useless, beautiful fossils. You wander into what must have been the parlour. Cold as a tomb. But in the corner sits a fireplace. Marble, fancy, unused for who knows how long. You check it. It's clean, no ashes. Whoever lived here probably relied on gas exclusively. No firewood, no chimney soot, no backup plan. You scavenge through the house, finding only scraps. A broken chair leg, a splintered desk drawer, a few dusty books. You toss it all in the grate and light it with matches you borrowed earlier from a barrel fire acquaintance. It catches. Barely. But it's something. You sit close, too close, letting the shallow flames warm your knees. The room starts to feel less like a tomb and more like a very low-budget sanctuary. The fire crackles. You add a book, something about 19th century chemistry. You're pretty sure the author would forgive you. This house was once a monument to modernity. Gas lines in every room, electric bell system, central plumbing. Now, it's a cave with a fire in it, Funny how fast progress reverses. And not everyone is taking it so gracefully. You've heard rumours, people blowing up their homes trying to force gas back through frozen lines. Desperate attempts to thaw pipes with candles. Whole blocks going dark from a single bad fix. One fringe theory that's floating around, and you hear it repeated often now, is that gas isn't just off, it's haunted. That the cold has summoned something, gas ghosts, angry spirits of Victorian engineers. Silly, sure, but when you're freezing to death in a crumbling mansion and burning textbooks for survival, a little ghost theory doesn't seem so far-fetched. You feed another page into the fire and lean back. The chair creaks. You imagine the original owner sitting here, sipping sherry by a gas lamp, never once wondering what would happen if the gas just stopped. There's a lesson here, buried somewhere between the splinters and the smoke. Every modern luxury is just one snowstorm away from becoming a joke. You've got no electricity, no gas, no backup, just a fire and a pile of flammable regrets. And the storm still hasn't peaked. You've been in the house for what feels like hours, feeding the reluctant fire with splinters and shredded pages, like some desperate offering to a half-interested god. Never gets truly warm, just less cold. The kind of heat that gives you hope, but not comfort. Eventually, your stash runs out. The chair is too thick to burn without an axe, and the books are gone. One last curl of smoke snakes up the chimney, and then, just glowing embers, back to the cold. You stand, bones aching like they've aged a century. Your legs have that stiff, dragging feeling, like your muscles are protesting every command. You tuck your hands under your arms, pacing in the parlour to stay awake. But even that has limits. You need a new plan, a better one. Outside, the wind is howling again. The snow doesn't fall now, it flies, horizontal sheets of ice slicing down the alleyways. Victorian London is being eaten alive by this storm, and you're just another flake in the wind. As you exit the house and push the door shut behind you, your breath catches, because standing in the snow across the street is a man in full formal wear. Top hat, tails, gloves that look like they've never known work. His shoes are polished, or were. He's shivering visibly, lips purple, but still holds his chin high like he's walking to a gala. You raise an eyebrow. You lost? He glances at you, eyes wild. No, just going to my club. He points vaguely east where the buildings vanish into the swirling white. They always keep the fire going. You don't have the heart to correct him. Good luck, you say. He nods once and disappears into the storm. You head the other direction. Your goal, find layers. The ones you have aren't cutting it. Victorian clothing is strange. Some of it practical, some of it absurdly decorative. You need to build up piece by piece, or you're going to end up frozen like that fancy gentleman. Some kind of snow-covered cautionary tale. You find a rag shop a few streets over, his windows cracked but intact. Inside is a mess, fabric, threadbare coats, piles of second-hand clothes soaked at the edges where the snow sneaks in. A bell above the door jingles as you enter, and a woman peers at you from behind the counter with the flat expression of someone who hasn't slept in days. 2 pennies for anything that fits, she says before you can ask. You rummage through the piles and come away with a heavy wool cloak, stiff and dusty but thick, and a pair of what might be ladies' stockings. Doesn't matter. You pull them over your gloves, double layering your hands. Next, a scarf reeking of mothballs and pipe smoke. Then a sweater, grey, knotted, barely holding itself together. You look ridiculous. You look like a walking thrift store that's been left in the rain. But you're warmer. You drop your few remaining coins on the counter. The woman doesn't even look up. Outside, the wind hits your new layers and for the first time bounces off. Not fully, but enough. You trudge onward, following the sounds of movement toward a park. Yes, a park. Normally you'd avoid it, but you hear hammering, activity, people. You find a makeshift camp there, tucked beneath the trees. A group of people, poor, middle class, even one man in what looks like a vicar's collar, have erected tarps and blankets tied between branches and lampposts. Fires burn in barrels and holes dug in the snow. It's an odd oasis, gritty and raw, but somehow alive. "Come in if you're clean," the man says at the edge, his accent sharp and sceptical. "We don't need lice." You nod and step forward slowly, offering your hands, your arms, letting him inspect you like a TSA agent of misery. He grunts and waves you in. Inside the encampment you hear voices for the first time in hours. Laughter even. Someone plays a tin whistle. Children chase each other around the trees, their boots barely clinging to their feet. Women huddle near fires, toasting dry biscuits on sticks. It smells like wood smoke and desperation, but it feels like a kind of hope. You settle near a fire beside a group of dock workers and their families. They're passing around a bottle of something strong, unlabelled. A woman offers you a tin plate with something thick and greyish bubbling in it. Stew, she says, mostly potato. You eat it. It's flavourless but warm, and it slides into your gut like a blessing. Someone wraps a shared blanket around your back. For now, you belong to the tribe. And here's something you hadn't expected. Victorians are absolute layering pros. One woman explains how to trap heat using paper between your shirt and waistcoat. Another shows you how to line your boots with old newsprint. It sounds insane, it is insane, but it works, a bit, enough to matter. A boy hands you a hot brick wrapped in cloth. You stare at it. For your bed, he says. Well, floor. You clutch it like a newborn. They teach you other tricks too, stuffing sleeves with a straw, wrapping scarf layers diagonally, holding your breath before going out into the wind so your lungs don't panic. How to sleep in pairs to share warmth without crossing social lines. Victorian winter etiquette is a thing, and all of this without gas. They mention it like a joke now. Remember gas, one man says, and the group chuckles grimly. Luxury. They've already shifted gears, adapted. Fire pits, hot stones, shared body heat. The wealthy are still waiting for the lights to come back on, and these people are making new ones. The fringe theory going around this group? The gas lines weren't built to fail, they were built for summer. Nobody in their right mind expected this level of cold in London, not for this long. The systems couldn't handle it. Nobody designed for prolonged frost. It's not sabotage, it's stupidity. And honestly, that might be worse. As night falls again, you lie beside a man named Will who used to work unloading coal from barges. He pulls a blanket over you both without a word. The fire flickers near your feet. The stars are invisible and the sky thick with moving clouds. You're still cold, but less so. And you realise as you finally drift off that survival isn't about beating the cold. It's about layering up and outlasting it. You wake up to someone shaking your shoulder, not gently, but with that particular urgency that says something's gone wrong. Your first thought is beer. Your second is frostbite. Turns out it's plumbing, or more accurately the lack of it. It's the privy, Will mutters, yanking the blanket off your legs. Overflowed sometime in the night. Frozen solid now. Best get moving before it stinks us all into the next life. Ah, yes, Victorian hygiene. You hadn't really thought about it yet. Too busy worrying about freezing to death to consider the other basic human needs. But now the smell hits you, low and bitter, and unmistakably biological. Even in the cold, it somehow finds a way to rise. The camp is stirring, groggy and annoyed. Children are being herded away from the far side of the tree line. Women are yelling, men are swearing. A makeshift outhouse, a bucket in a wooden stall, really, has collapsed under the weight of snow and, well, usage. Now it's a frozen biohazard, and no one wants to deal with it. You step back, tugging your scarf over your nose. Welcome to the unglamorous side of surviving a Victorian snowstorm. Waste management. With no functioning plumbing, no working pumps, and now no gas, the entire city is experiencing a full-blown sanitation crisis. Indoor toilets, if you had one, are frozen. Outdoor privies are either overflowing or iced shut. Chamber pots are the new currency of survival, and the streets are quietly returning to their old role, public latrine. You try not to think about it too hard as you pack up your things. The fire has died down, and most people are beginning to disperse, heading toward whatever shelter they can find before the next front rolls in. The wind has picked up again, sharper now, and the sky has that heavy metallic look, like someone dragged a sheet of lead across it. You leave the park and head down a side street, following the smell of smoke and something vaguely savoury. Turns out someone's managed to get a proper cook fire going in the backyard of an abandoned butcher shop. They're boiling water, actual boiling water, a rare sight now, and tossing in bones, roots, and something that might be leeks. Soup kitchen, a woman informs you, ladling slop into tin bowls. Of sorts. Bring your own bowl next time, eh? You nod and accept a steaming mug someone left behind. The liquid is hot and vaguely onion-flavoured. It could be rat broth and you wouldn't care. It warms your fingers, and that's all that matters. As you eat, you chat with a man named Charles who used to be a plumber before the pipes turned into death traps. It's the worst kind of free, he explains, rubbing his hands together. Everything's brittle. Metal snaps, wood warps, clay pipes, Those terracotta ones just explode when the water inside freezes. No warning, just bang, and suddenly your floor's a swamp. You raise an eyebrow. Can't you thaw them? He snorts. Sure, if you want to blow your house up. Apparently people have been trying, lighting fires near frozen pipes, pouring boiling water on joints, even stuffing candles inside open taps. The results have been mixed. Best case scenario, a loud crack and a flooded room. Worst case, gas still trapped in the line ignites, and suddenly your bathroom becomes a cautionary tale. So most people are doing what you're about to do, figuring out alternatives. You hike further into the city toward the working class tenements near Whitechapel. There you find a sort of communal solution. A public alley, semi-sheltered, where someone's rigged up mud as tarps and stacked snow to form makeshift stalls. It's grim, but it's organised. A sign hangs above the alley entrance, scrawled in chalk. Men this side, ladies other. No funny business. You step in, it smells exactly like you'd expect, and yet somehow not the worst thing you've smelled today. People wait in line quietly, stoic and shivering. It's not dignified, but it works. At least until someone figures out how to unclog a sewer or thaw a pump. Further down the block you find a family hauling buckets of snow into their kitchen. They're melting it over a coal fire for drinking water. One of the children looks up at you with blue lips and says, "We use the yellow snow for the washing, saves time." You try to smile, fail. These are the adjustments people are making, small compromises that chip away at sanity. Hygiene isn't just inconvenient now, it's dangerous. No one wants to touch water because it instantly freezes on your skin. Soap is scarce and the rivers are choked with ice and runoff. Illness is beginning to spread. Not dramatic cholera outbreaks, not yet, but quiet infections, skin rashes, eye inflammation, coughs that stick and don't leave. A woman passes you in the street holding a bundle of linen and muttering to herself. She's trying to find a place to do laundry. Laundry in this weather. And that's when the real horror hits you. Even the mundane has turned against you. Everything you took for granted, running water, warm toilets, soap, privacy, it's all gone, stripped away by snow and silence and the gas that never came back. You pass by a building with a sign out front. Apothecary, open during storm. Desperate, you step inside. A brass bell rings above the door. The air smells like camphor and decay. Behind the counter, a man with wild grey hair and ink-stained fingers eyes you suspiciously. Need a tonic? He asks. Lung comfort, digestive aid, or personal hygiene? You hesitate. Got a lavender vinegar spray that'll keep you fresh even if you haven't washed in a week, he offers with a sly grin. You take it, you spray it, you regret it. You smell like floral pickles for the rest of the day. But hey, it's better than smelling like a Victorian alley. Later that evening, you find a public bathhouse, miraculously open, though barely. Inside, it's like stepping into a greenhouse made of mildew and steam. The workers are charging a steep fee, but they are letting people wash with lukewarm water piped in from a rooftop cistern that hasn't frozen yet. The line stretches around the block. One woman's already fainted from waiting too long. You skip the bath, not because you don't need it, but because you know the price. Once you get wet, you'll never get dry again. And wet in this weather is a death sentence. Instead, you huddle beside the building's exhaust vent with a few others. The heat coming off it is barely noticeable, but it's real. And real is rare right now. As night falls, you tuck yourself under an overhang with a group of chimney sweeps, soot-faced teens with oversized coats and way too much street wisdom. One of them lights a candle and props it between two bricks. Better than nothing, he says. You nod. He's right. In the absence of modernity, a single flame becomes civilization. By morning, your body is starting to forget what it feels like to be warm. That little thread of residual heat you'd carried from one fire to the next is gone now, burned out sometime in the night while you slept on stone beneath a dripping overhang. The candle, that tiny flicker of hope, had long since extinguished, leaving behind nothing but a smudge of wax and a blackened wick. You wake up to find your legs stiff, your fingertips tingling with a dull kind of pain that feels like your nerves are still thinking about giving up. Your stomach joins in, complaining in low, echoing growls that vibrate through your ribs. It's been too long since that bowl of mostly potato stew, and now your body is demanding something hot, something real. If you don't eat soon, you'll stop being cold and start being gone. You remember what people said yesterday, that the coal's not coming, the gas is still dead, and the best chance for something edible is to find someone who still knows how to cook in this pre-apocalyptic powdered sugar version of London. Real Victorian cooking, if you can even call it that, was a mix of creativity, guesswork, and boiling things until they surrendered. So you set off down the icy street, limbs shaking slightly, scarf pulled tight over your mouth to block the wind that seems intent on flaying the last bit of feeling from your cheeks. Everything is silent again. The city's swallowed up in white, save for the occasional clatter of hooves or the crunch of footsteps ahead of you. The snow has stopped falling for now, but what remains has been churned into a sort of frozen porridge that grabs at your boots like quicksand. Your goal? Find food. Cook it. Survive. Eventually, you stumble upon a narrow alley near Spitalfields. You'd almost miss it, but you catch a whiff, something sharp and meaty, layered under the usual scent of soot and unwashed humanity. A smell that, dare you believe, might be broth. You duck through the alley and into a courtyard that's been walled in with crates and old bed frames. At the centre sits a cast-iron coal range, one of those bulky Victorian beasts that looks like it could either bake bread or summon a demon, depending on how you operate it. A small crowd is huddled around it. A woman in a soot-streaked apron tends the pot, stirring with a ladle the size of your arm. She's sweating despite the cold, her cheeks pink from both heat and exertion. "You here to work or just stare?" she barks, not unkindly. You blink. "I can work." "Good, chop the turnips." You don't even know where the turnips are, but someone hands you a basket and a dull knife. You squat beside a crate and start hacking away. Your hands are numb, clumsy, but the act of movement feels good, like you're rejoining the living. The woman, who introduces herself as Elsie, explains that she's salvaged the coal range from a closed pie shop 2 blocks over, dragged it here with the help of 3 neighbours and a stolen wheelbarrow. "Built like a ship's engine," she says proudly, tapping it. "And just as temperamental." There's barely any coal left, so she's supplementing with firewood, furniture legs, and a surprisingly efficient mix of dried orange peels and old newspapers. The soup is a wild combination of whatever people can offer. Salted beef scraps, barley, onions, and mystery root vegetables that someone insists are edible. Someone else contributes dried peas. Another brings stale bread, which gets toasted and dropped into bowls like Victorian croutons. It smells amazing. As the turnips soften and the soup bubbles, you get the rundown on how cooking has changed since the gas went out. Most people relied on coal ranges or open fireplaces before gas cooking became popular. Gas stoves were the future, cleaner, faster, easier to control, but they required a steady gas line, and right now, that's about as reliable as a paper umbrella in a thunderstorm. So now, everyone's gone backward, scrambling for solid fuel and makeshift kitchens. People are cooking in alleys, in bathtubs, even in stairwells, anywhere with airflow and enough space to keep from setting the building on fire. One woman shares a story about trying to fry eggs over a candle. Another talks about building a clay oven in her garden, using old flower pots in desperation. People are learning fast, or they're not eating at all. You glance at the pot, where the soup is finally ready. Bowls are passed out. Yours is chipped but whole, filled with steaming beige liquid that smells like meat and dreams. You cradle it in your gloved hands like a precious artifact, the heat seeping through the ceramic into your palms. The first sip is everything, savoury, hot, and slightly salty, real nourishment. You almost cry, but you don't. You finish every drop, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and ask if you can help again tomorrow. Elsie nods. "If we've got anything to cook." That night, you sit beside the coal range long after the others have gone, watching the embers flicker in the grate. Someone drops in a bundle of twigs wrapped in wax cloth. The fire flares, casting a dancing orange glow across the courtyard walls. You ask Elsie what she thinks of the gas failure, what the real story is. "Truth," she says, leaning on the ladle. "The city got too used to easy heat. Gas made people soft. It failed because we stopped remembering how to live without it." There's some debate about that, of course. Some scholars believe early gas infrastructure was just badly engineered for winter. Others think city officials underestimated the risk of centralised systems failing at scale. There are even fringe theorists suggesting sabotage by coal interests, an underground battle between the old ways and the new, but Elsie doesn't care. She's cooking soup in a courtyard over stolen wood. That's the reality. You settle in, your coat now stiff from days of wear, your scarf damp at the edges. The cold's still there, nipping at your nose and ears, but you've got a full belly and a fire near your feet. That's survival, Victorian style. Boil what you've got, burn what you must, and keep feeding the flames. Tomorrow you'll look for more turnips, or whatever's left. You wake up to the sound of coughing. Not the polite kind. Not the someone swallowed their tea wrong kind. This is the deep, wet, rib-rattling kind that echoes down alleyways and bounces off soot-stained bricks. The kind that makes you wonder if the lungs involved are still structurally sound. You roll over, still wrapped in your crusty coat and a thin blanket someone left folded by the coal range, and realise half the people in the courtyard are hacking now. In the night, one of the children threw up beside the crates. A woman wipes his face with a cloth that used to be white. Elsie is pacing, hands on her hips, muttering to herself. The soup pot is cold, the fire's out, and the sky above is a cruel pale grey. No sun, just more lightless winter. Oh, you're not sick, yet, but your throat feels dry and scratchy, like it has been scraped with a wooden spoon. Your lips are cracked, your nose is half frozen, and you're starting to suspect that your immune system is waving a tiny white flag behind the scenes. Illness is coming. Or maybe it's already here. Elsie doesn't waste time. No more shared bowls, she announces. Wash your hands in snow at least. And if you're coughing, sleep outside the circle. No one argues. These are the kinds of rules you don't debate when there's no doctor in sight, no antibiotics, and no working health system. One mistake, and half the camp could end up face down in the slush. Welcome to the part of the Victorian snowstorm they don't put on postcards. The problem isn't just the cold anymore, it's what comes with it. Cold leads to weakness. Weakness leads to infection. And in 1880s London, that infection often has a name: cholera, dysentery, tuberculosis. Some of them aren't even picky about how you die. They'll take lungs, guts, kidneys, whatever they can get. You've heard the horror stories already. The woman 2 streets over who coughed herself unconscious. The butcher's apprentice who started bleeding from his gums. The old man who was just trying to warm his hands over a candle and collapsed mid-sentence. Some say it's the cold, some say it's the coal smoke. Others whisper about cursed air or poisoned snow. You don't believe in curses, but the snow does have a certain malicious persistence. You leave the courtyard in search of fresh snow, the cleaner kind, untrampled, so the others can melt it for drinking water. You pass a few shuttered shops, the windows now crusted with frost thick enough to etch your name in. You make a mental note. That might be your only gravestone if you don't find a way to stay ahead of the curve. A group of boys run past you on the street, barefoot, carrying an old blanket between them like a sack. One of them shouts, "Hot bricks, 3 for a penny." You pause and ask where they got the bricks. "Baker's oven," the tallest says proudly. "What's left of it?" They're running a little side hustle, baking bricks in the dying heat of a closed-down bakery, wrapping them in rags, and selling them to people too cold or too sick to argue. It's a smart move, possibly genius, definitely risky. The baker might still be alive, and if he catches them, they're toast. But you remember the brick someone gave you 2 nights ago, the way it stayed warm in your coat for hours, almost too hot to touch at first. These kids are doing more for the city than the gas company at this point. You give them your last coin and take a warm brick. They nod and vanish into the fog like goblin entrepreneurs. By the time you return to the courtyard, 2 more people have started coughing. One of the chimney sweep boys is shivering under a tarp, and Elsie's trying to convince him to lie closer to the fire. "No," he says through chattering teeth. "Don't want to make nobody worse." She gives him a look. "You'll be worse if you freeze to death, you little idiot." Eventually, she relents and lets him curl near the fire, but she builds a little barrier of crates between him and the rest of the group. Quarantine Victorian style, it doesn't feel like enough. You start to hear murmurs from the others about going to the real doctors, the ones uptown, the ones who probably haven't even lost gas, who still have servants lighting fires and boiling water and handing out cough drops laced with opium and brandy. There's even talk of visiting the hospitals, but everyone knows that's a gamble. You go in with a cold, you come out with no money and a note that says, "We did what we could." You ask Elsie if she thinks it's cholera. She shakes her head. Not yet. Not the gut kind anyway. This is in the lungs. Too much smoke, too much cold air. People coughing their own breath back in. No circulation, just festering. The irony, of course, is that people are making themselves sick trying not to freeze. Every fire they light adds smoke to lungs that can't handle it. Every room sealed up for warmth becomes a petri dish. No fresh air, no clean water, no soap, and absolutely no way out, and no gas. Still, not a whisper of it. Someone heard a rumour that the mains in the West End might be flowing again, but that's miles away. Might as well be another continent. The weirdest part is the contrast. Outside it's still beautiful. The snow softens the city's hard edges. Rooftops glitter. Trees stand like sculptures. Every corner looks like a Christmas card but under that postcard is rot. Rot in the lungs, rot in the water, rot in the walls. Later that day you sneak into an apothecary again. Different one this time. This one's more cluttered, more chaotic, more homegrown. Bottles with hand-scratched labels, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, a stray cat curled beside a mortar and pestle. The apothecary is an older woman named Mags, with wiry grey hair and a pipe she never lights. She eyes you and says, "Cold's got teeth. Don't it, sit?" You nod. She mixes you something. Says it's good for lung chills. It smells like pine and licorice and something bitter that might be horsehoof. You drink it. Instantly regret it. But your sinuses open like church doors, and your lungs feel lighter. Slightly. "Don't ask what's in it," she says. "Just breathe." You leave with a tin of something called vapour salts and a bundle of dried leaves. You don't know what to do with them, but you feel better just holding them. A placebo with a scent. It counts. Back in the courtyard, the coughing continues. But you've got your warm brick, your smelly leaves, and a plan. Get through the night. That's all. Just this one. No promises after. Because right now, it's not the snow that's trying to kill you. It's what's riding in with it. Or you don't expect much from sleep anymore. The most you hope for is a stretch of unconsciousness where your body forgets it's freezing. But tonight, the cold isn't even the biggest problem. It's the damp. Your blanket, such as it is soaked from the inside out, your breath trapped and condensed into the fibres over hours. When you shift, it clings to your back like a cold slap. Every inch of you aches, and your boots feel like they've frozen to your ankles. You try the old tricks, curling up like a cat, tucking your hands under your armpits, thinking in warm thoughts. They don't work. Your warmest thought is tea, and even that feels distant and imaginary, like something from a book you didn't finish. But you did have one smart idea before lying down: the hot brick. You wrapped it in a rag, shoved it into your bedding, and it's still faintly warm. Not enough to toast you, but enough to remind you that heat once existed, and that for now will have to do. The camp is quieter tonight. Fewer fires, fewer voices. The coughing has thinned out, not because people are getting better, but because most of them are too exhausted to cough. When dawn comes, it's not with sunlight, but with weight. The roof of a nearby tenement creaks loudly, and then you hear it. An awful slow groan, like a giant drawing in its last breath. Snow has piled so thick on top of the building that the structure is starting to sag. And in the silence that follows, everyone knows what comes next. You're on your feet, running toward the sound before you know why. It's instinct, curiosity maybe, a bit of morbid panic. When you reach the street, a crowd has already formed, dozens of people staring up at the bowing roofline of a 3-story building, its gutters sagging under the weight of snow like exhausted arms. "It's gonna go," someone says. "Back up," says another. And then it does. With a crack like a gunshot, the roof gives way. The centre caves in, sending a flood of snow and splintered timber crashing down through the upper floors. Dust and snow surge from the windows like flour from a broken sack. The whole building exhales in a gasp of debris and then sags, lopsided, one wall still standing like a defiant jawbone. People rush forward, some to help, others just to see. You follow, cautious, as the rubble settles into silence. No screaming, no movement. A woman next to you wipes her nose with her sleeve. "Heard the chimney stack was cracked," she mutters. "Should have known it'd collapse." The building had been home to 3 families. 2 were out when it fell, the 3rd, no one's sure. Someone starts digging, shouting a name, someone else pulls at a timber beam, coughing in the dust. You help where you can, and your hands stinging from the cold, fingers barely responding. They find a man in the lower floor, pinned but alive. His face is streaked with blood and plaster dust, but he's breathing. They pull him free and wrap him in coats, murmuring praise and reassurance like it's going to keep him warm. This is the new normal. Snow kills. It kills in slow, patient ways. Frostbite, infection, starvation. But now it's killing fast too. Collapsing roofs, crumbling walls, overloaded gutters snapping and crashing down onto heads. And without gas to keep the buildings warm, the freeze sinks in deeper. Warping beams, cracking plaster, rotting floorboards. Every home in the city is a ticking snow bomb. You wander away from the wreckage in a fog, stumbling into a quiet street where someone scrawled "We've moved" on the door of a crumbling bakery. Below it, in smaller letters, "Downstairs, warm bricks for sale." You knock. A boy opens the door. Same crew from earlier, the barefoot brick sellers. Now they've expanded into architecture. "Come on," he says, jerking his thumb inside. But mind the ceiling." You duck inside and descend a narrow flight of steps into what was once the bakery's cellar. It's cramped, warm, and utterly insane. They've turned the room into a kind of weird, smoky haven. Bricks are stacked in the oven like loaves glowing faintly. People sit in corners, holding them close like sleeping pets. The air is thick with smoke and ash, but it's hot. You immediately feel the contrast. Your skin prickles, your joints loosen. The heat isn't clean. It's gritty, damp, and smells like burned shoes. But your body doesn't care. You sink into a corner with a brick, cradling it like a child, and let your head rest against the soot-streaked wall. You don't even care how they're fueling the oven. Turns out it's mostly door frames. "We knock on doors," the boy explains. "Ask if they've got spare wood. Trade bricks for beams." It's not sustainable, but it's brilliant. The kind of scrappy, desperate genius that Victorian kids seem to have in spades. You spend a couple of hours there until your feet stop feeling like wet rocks. The warmth seeps into your bones, and for the first time in days you almost sweat, but then the ground shakes slightly. It's not an earthquake. Not really. Just the sound of another building giving up the fight. You and the others freeze. Somewhere above, timbers snap, a chimney stack topples, and snow slams down onto the street outside like an avalanche in miniature. The boy doesn't even flinch. "That's the row behind us," he says. "Probably the tailors." He says it like you might say it's Tuesday. That's the pace now. One collapse every few hours. The snow is no longer just a burden. It's a threat, a weapon, and it doesn't care if you're rich or poor, warm or freezing. You leave the bakery reluctantly, taking a warm brick for the road. As you step back onto the street, you hear someone shouting about sandbags and snow loads and propping the joists. A group of men are stacking crates against the sides of a building. Trying to reinforce the exterior walls with whatever junk they can find, you ask if you can help. They hand you a hammer and point to a sagging porch. "Nail the boards across, quick as you can." You work for hours, hands numb, breath puffing in frantic bursts, swinging the hammer like your life depends on it. And maybe it does. You're not just reinforcing one house, you're reinforcing an entire neighbourhood's belief that maybe they can survive this. And as night comes, you step back, exhausted, covered in sawdust and sweat, and realise you just built something, not much, but enough to make the snow think twice. By now, you've stopped expecting comfort. Warmth is no longer a sensation you chase, just a momentary absence of pain. Hunger's not the gnawing beast it used to be. It's faded into a dull companion, a low static humming at the edge of your awareness. And sleep? You don't sleep anymore. You shut your eyes and hope your brain doesn't invent more dreams about food you'll never eat or fires you can't reach in time. But tonight, something strange happens. You're sitting in the corner of a candlelit parlour, wrapped in layers that resemble a collapsed laundry line, when a woman in a petticoat and shawl clinks a teacup and clears her throat. "Right, everyone," she says. "Since the world's ending, we might as well have a bit of gossip, yes?" You blink. You're in a parlour gathering, somehow, through a combination of dumb luck, vague invitations, and the magnetic pull of flickering candlelight. You've found yourself among a group of Londoners who've decided to ignore the collapse of civilization in favour of light entertainment. It's absurd. It's beautiful. And you're not saying no. The room smells faintly of paraffin and old perfume. Heavy curtains are drawn across the windows, and candles are propped in anything that can hold them. Teacups, empty bottles, a hollowed-out turnip. There's a fire, or something like one, made from a pile of old books and half a piano leg. It smokes more than it burns, but it's warmish. Around you are a dozen people. Some sit on cracked leather chairs, some squat on cushions on the floor. There's an old man in a dressing gown that looks like it hasn't been removed since summer. A woman in morning black with a flask she's not sharing. A young clerk who smells like linseed oil and fear. And you, of course, the outsider with the wrong boots and a haunted look. The host, Miss Lillian, she insists, serves weak tea with a triumphant flourish. "Mint and chicory," she declares, found it at the back of the pantry behind the barley tin. tastes like a herb garden died in your mouth. You drink every drop. She passes around a plate of tiny biscuits that might have been edible 3 snowstorms ago. You pretend to nibble one. It's mostly air and regret. And then the games begin. Someone pulls out a pack of cards. Not for poker, no one here has anything worth betting, but for fortune-telling. The old man starts dealing like he knows what he's doing. You get the 9 of swords. Miss Lillian gasps dramatically. "Ooh, dire," she says. "That one's for nightmares and dread." You shrug. Feels accurate. Someone else draws the tower. Everyone groans. Someone coughs. As the evening rolls on, the stories get louder and stranger. One woman claims her chimney sweep uncle saw a frozen angel in the snow, arms raised to the sky. Another swears she passed a man outside Somerset House who was glowing, lit from within like a lantern. No fire in sight. A few snicker, but no one really laughs. Not anymore. The line between rumour and reality is just too blurry now. You contribute a story of your own, the hot brick traders in the bakery, the way the cellar breathed warmth like it was alive. Someone calls it genius. Someone else says illegal. Miss Lillian raises her teacup. Necessity, she declares as if that ends the debate. And maybe it does. It's easy to forget in moments like these that you're in a city falling apart, that the gas has been gone for days, that the streets are full of snowbanks taller than carriages, that people are burning books and floorboards and sometimes whole walls just to survive another night, that the factories have closed, the markets are empty, and every candle you see is a tiny rebellion against the dark. In this room, with its flickering light and shared body heat, you're part of something else, something older. Parlour culture, they used to call it. Before gas and electricity, people gathered like this all the time. Music, gossip, lying to each other politely. The whole thing feels ridiculous and precious and weirdly soothing. You learn things here too, little scraps of survival hidden in the chatter. Someone swears by putting a heated stone in a sock and sleeping with it on your chest. Someone else tells you how to sew old rags into a draft snake and wedge it under the door to block out cold. The morning woman offers her favourite tip with a chuckle. Whiskey makes the cold more polite. But the best trick comes from the old man in the dressing gown, who explains the Victorian art of warming bricks in the oven, then stacking them by your bed like little radiators. He used to work in a boarding school, he says. Taught the boys how to line their beds with them in winter. Keeps the feet from dying, he says cheerfully. You ask if it really works. He smiles. Only one way to find out. At some point, the clerk starts playing a tune on a cracked flute. He pulls from his coat like a magician. The notes wobble, ghostly and thin, but they're real, actual music. It sends a shiver up your spine that has nothing to do with how the cold. The whole room goes quiet to listen, each person leaning forward as if afraid the sound might break. When he finishes, someone whispers, "Play it again." He doesn't. He tucks the flute away like a secret. Time drips slowly forward. The candles burn low. The fire sinks into ash. People begin to shift, stand, gather their coats. Miss Lillian thanks you all for coming like this was a dinner party and not a war council. You help tidy the cushions, and before you leave, she presses something into your hand. A tiny tin of matches, half full. "You'll need them," she says, then adds, "And bring gossip up next time. Something juicy, something scandalous." You promise you will. Outside, the snow has begun again. It's lighter now, a dusting rather than a dump. The wind still cuts, but after the warmth of the parlour, you feel strangely strong, renewed. Like all the absurdity of conversation and cold tea somehow stitched your soul back together for another round. You make it halfway back to the courtyard before realising you've been smiling for 5 whole minutes. Not because anything's better, but because somehow, in a city of soot and ice and saunce, people are still telling stories. By now, your standards have collapsed so thoroughly that you're genuinely thrilled to be standing in front of an apothecary's cracked wooden door at sunrise, hoping someone inside will sell you something vaguely medicinal and not actively poisonous. You're not even sure what you need. Maybe something for your throat or your lungs or your nerves or whatever part of your brain now panics every time the wind picks up. You've hit that part of the Victorian snowstorm where survival and self-medication are basically synonyms. The shop is crooked, leaning slightly into the street like it's tired of holding itself up. Its windows are fogged with condensation from the inside. Always a good sign in this weather. You push the door open and the familiar brass bell rings above your head. A woman behind the counter looks up, squinting through a monocle she doesn't actually seem to need. You look cold, she says, as if that isn't a universal condition right now, and likely damp. Just browsing, you reply, which is hilarious because you have no money. She gestures toward the shelves, cluttered with bottles of every shape and level of dustiness. You walk past jars of treacle, beef tallow, rosewater, and something labelled snake cordial with a drawing of what looks suspiciously like a lizard doing ballet. A sign above the counter proudly proclaims, "Remedies for body and spirit, no refunds." You ask what she recommends for chest tightness and a cough that makes you taste metal. She smiles with the expression of someone about to sell you something that will either fix you completely or kill you in your sleep. She pulls a dark green bottle off the shelf, blows dust off the label, and says, "This one's for the lungs, strong, got opium, licorice, ginger, and a touch of camphor. Old family recipe." You examine the label. It says soothing breath tonic. Guaranteed relief from cough, melancholy, and moral weakness. It also contains alcohol. Of course it does. You hesitate. She opens a drawer and hands you a tiny tin of lozenges as a sample. "Don't take more than 2, she says, leaning in, "unless you want to dream of God and forget your own name." You pocket the tin and promise to be responsible, which is a lie. You're already wondering how much would count as too much. While you're still browsing, an older man comes in, coughing violently into a wool scarf. His eyes are sunken, and he smells like coal smoke and regret. He asks for the black syrup, and the woman nods knowingly. She goes to the back and returns us with a thick vial of something that looks like melted licorice and has the consistency of crude oil. He downs it without a word, shivers once, and leaves. "Old-timers," she says. "They want the stuff that makes them feel like they're dying slower." You glance at the shelf again. There's a bottle labelled Phantom Tonic and another called Dr. Tutgrummel's Vital Elixir, no more than thrice per moon. Someone has placed a sprig of dried lavender beside a corked jar filled with yellowing, unidentifiable flakes. You're in the middle of a medical time capsule, and half of it probably violates modern chemistry laws. And yet, people are lining up outside now. Word's gotten around that this place still has supplies, or at least interesting promises. Back on the street, you take a single lozenge from the tin and let it dissolve. It tastes like bitter honey, ashes, and a little whisper of menthol. But it works. Your throat loosens, your breath comes easier, and for the first time all week you don't sound like you're trying to exercise something when you speak. You return to the courtyard, triumphant. Elsie greets you with a tired nod. "Did you get the syrup?" You shake your head. "Got lozenges and a lung tonic." She raises an eyebrow. "Opium?" You nod. She doesn't question it. Everyone's past judgment now. One of the chimney sweeps has taken a turn for the worse. His cough is wet and constant, and his skin has the colour of bread dough left too long in the cold. Elsie gives him a teaspoon of something from the apothecary and rubs his back with a cloth soaked in vinegar and gin. "Old cure," she mutters, "or an old lie. Either way." No one else can sleep with the noise, so that night becomes another vigil. People trade stories and potions, rubbing salves on cracked skin, spooning mystery broth into quivering hands. You pass around the lozenges like candy. They become a little ritual. Take one, say something hopeful, then sit by the fire until your toes feel like they still belong to you. Later, someone brings out a glass jar full of thick yellow powder. "Mustard," they say, "old remedy for colds." They heat it with water and smear it across a rag, which they then lay across the chest of the sick boy. He twitches violently and lets out a noise between a gasp and a whimper. "Means it's working," someone claims. Others are less scientific. A woman swears by binding a raw onion to the sole of your foot to draw out fever. Another has tied garlic to her wrist with string, as a ward against illness. When you ask her if it's working, she just shrugs. "I'm not dead yet." Scholars still debate whether these remedies were ever effective or just part of a collective placebo festival. Some argue that opium syrup at least allowed people to rest, which gave their bodies a fighting chance. Others point out that it also caused overdoses, hallucinations, and occasionally people trying to ride goats that weren't there. There's a fringe theory floating around now that the snow itself is to blame, that some new frost-borne disease is sweeping through the city, airborne, invisible, riding the wind. People are calling it snow lung or the pale breath. No one agrees on symptoms, but everyone agrees it feels worse when the snow is thickest. That night you lie near the fire with your coat over your face and your feet pressed against a hot brick. You're not sick, not badly, but your body hums with warning signs like a machine straining under too much use. You clutch the tin of lozenges in your pocket like a lucky charm. Around you, people breathe in unison. Some snore, some wheeze, a few cough in ragged intervals, but they're alive. And in this city, right now, that's the most you can ask for. You close your eyes and whisper a little wish, not to be cured, not to be rescued, not even for warmth, just for tomorrow. One more. Morning doesn't arrive with birdsong or sunlight. It arrives with the thud of boots and a shouted name in the alley. "Elsie, you still alive in there?" It's not a friendly call. It's the kind of tone that says, you owe me something, and if you don't answer, someone's going to come knocking with more than just their fist. Elsie sighs, pushes the blanket off her knees, and lumbers up from her spot near the coals. She's been up half the night tending to the boy with the cough, that cough that sounds less human now and more like someone trying to wring water out of a rug through their chest. He's still breathing barely. You can hear from here. Every inhale's a coin toss. Elsie opens the alley gate and a rush of cold pours in. The man on the other side is wrapped in a heavy overcoat. One of those military-issue types with the brass buttons dulled by soot. His beard is caked in ice, his nose is red, but his expression says business. "You said you'd take a shift this week," he says. "We need hands." Elsie doesn't argue. "I know, I'm coming." The man looks past her at the rest of you, his eyes scanning the courtyard like he's taking inventory. "Anyone else?" he calls out. "We're short. 10 workers down, 5 froze, 2 went home, 3 never showed." You blink. You hadn't realised it had gotten that bad. "What kind of work?" you ask, already knowing you're going to regret the answer. "Factory, textile mill on lower Thames, still got a coal boiler, still got heat." He says it like a bribe, and honestly, it kind of is. You exchange looks with the others. The factory isn't close. It's a long, miserable walk through snowdrifts, over black ice, past collapsed buildings and streets that smell like burnt leather and despair. But heat is heat, and if they're offering it in exchange for labour, it might be the best deal left in the city. You agree to go. Because of course you do. The man grunts, jerks his head. "Bring gloves. And if you don't have gloves, bring pain tolerance." It takes almost an hour to reach the factory. The city looks worse than yesterday. More roofs caved in, more buildings abandoned. Someone's boarded up an entire pub and painted the word "closed forever" across the door in dripping white paint. That feels unnecessarily final. You pass a man dragging a sled piled high with splintered furniture legs. His beard is frozen in clumps. He doesn't speak, just trudges past like a ghost with errands. The textile mill looms ahead, an enormous brick rectangle with tall, smoke-belching chimneys, one of the few plumes of dark against the grey sky. Inside, it's chaos. Warm chaos, but chaos nonetheless. The heat hits you immediately, and for a moment you think your skin might melt off. But then your joints start to loosen, and your fingers regain their usual twitchy character. A whistle shrieks overhead, and someone barks orders like this is still a functioning economy. You're handed a scarf to tie over your face and pointed toward a pile of fabric bolts. The work is simple: sort, fold, stack, repeat. But the pace is brutal, the air thick with lint, and the sound of machinery is deafening. Everything echoes, metal on metal, wheels turning, chains rattling, voices swallowed in the roar. The heat, though, it's real. Not just warmth, but the kind that seeps in and reminds your body what life used to feel like. You flex your hands and they don't crack. You stretch your shoulders and they creak, but they move. You could cry from the sheer luxury of it. But it doesn't last. 2 hours in, you're sweating under your legs. Your scarf is damp, your breath feels thick. The heat is turning stale, oppressive, like breathing through a sock. The foreman walks by, scowling. "No slowing down," he growls. "We're behind quota." Quota. You didn't even know there was a quota. You glance at Elsie across the room. She's elbow deep in a basket of yarn, her face flushed, her fingers moving with grim determination. This isn't about wages anymore. It's about staying warm for 1 more hour. The factory is heat for labour, a transaction. You move your arms, you earn warmth. You stop, you get kicked out into the snow. You're not sure who's winning that trade. By midday, someone collapses. A girl, no older than 15, drops beside the sorting table. No one stems. The foreman waves her off like if she's spilled a drink. 2 workers drag her to the side and prop her near a vent. You keep folding. Later, someone hands you a cup of something steaming. tea, sort of. It tastes like lint water and old sugar, but it's hot and your hands curl around it greedily. You down it in 2 gulps and go back to work. The foreman finally gives you 15 minutes to breathe, and you step outside into the frigid air like a prisoner gulping first freedom. Your skin prickles as the cold sinks in again, but your core stays warm, for now. Elsie joins you on a crate beside a broken cart, wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. They say the East End gas lines are gone for good, she mutters. Too many ruptures, not worth the repair. You nod. You'd guessed as much. West End's hoarding what's left, she adds. Private homes, big estates, gas companies still delivering to the rich. Everyone else can burn their beds. You look down at your boots, at the cracks in the soles, at the way snow has already begun to crust along the laces. We're not getting gas back. Elsie doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. You return to the factory for another round, and the work starts to feel mechanical. Fold, stack, lift, repeat. Your arms ache, your knees complain, but the fire in the belly of the building keeps your body functional. And that's the trick. In here, you can work. Outside, you can only endure. When the shift ends, you're given a crust of bread and half a turnip. No pay, just food and the promise you can come back tomorrow. You take it. Because what else are you going to do? You trudge home in the gathering dark, scarf frozen stiff, fingers cramping. By the time you reach the courtyard, the air is bitter again, and you're coughing just once, but it rattles deep. The boy's still sick. The fire is low, but your body is warm, and your stomach has something in it. And for now, that's survival. You don't make it to the courtyard before someone grabs your coat sleeve. You spin, already half ready to swing, but it's not a threat, it's a child, maybe 7, no shoes. Just rags wrapped around their feet and a soot-covered face poking out from under a flat cap that's definitely been stolen from someone older and less successful. You got anything warm? The kid asks, bold as brass. Or something to burn? You shake your head, but that's not really true. Your pockets still hold a sliver of wax paper from your factory bread, a torn glove lining and 1 match left in Miss Lillian's little tin. Not enough to help anyone. Not enough to help yourself. The kid keeps walking beside you anyway, their eyes scanning the street like they're casing every object for flammability. Name's Tom, they announce. Not short for Thomas, just Tom. You? You give your name, and they nod like you've been hired into some invisible street gang. You look like you ain't from around here, they add. Bit too clean, bit too upright. You're about to argue, but then you catch your reflection in a frosted window. You do look upright. Not cleaner exactly. Your coat's a disaster and your face has 3 separate streaks of mystery grime, but you're still carrying yourself like someone from the upper half of the socio-economic ladder. Bad idea. You got anywhere warm to go? Tom asks. You nod toward the courtyard. Been staying there. Tom shakes their head. No good. Too many sick now. I hear the old wash house is better. You hesitate. It open? Only the roof's collapsed a little, Tom says brightly. Come on. You follow. What else can you do? Tom leads you through back streets and alleys that look less like places people live and more like where furniture goes to die. You pass a pile of firewood being guarded by a dog so mangy you can see its thoughts. A family huddles in the doorway of a shuttered pub, using a broken door as a windbreak. It's bleak, but oddly industrious. People are adapting, sort of. Eventually you arrive at the wash house, or what's left of it. The place once served as a public laundry, a marvel of municipal progress with big iron tubs and communal drying lines. Now it's a skeleton. One wall is gone, and the roof sags like it's given up, but inside it's surprisingly bustling. A dozen or so kids, barefoot, smoke-streaked and too thin for winter, are working the place like it's a military camp. Fires are lit in old basins, burning everything from crate wood to, no joke, someone's bookshelf. A pile of blankets is stacked in the corner, and one older girl is in charge of handing them out based on what you can offer in trade. Tom strides in like royalty. Got a new one, they announce. Says they work the factory line. Didn't say that, you mutter. Doesn't matter, the girl says. Can you patch socks? What? We've got a pile that needs stitching. You can sit near the fire if you work. You take the offer, and so your night is spent sewing socks with a rusted needle and twine that might once have been thread, surrounded by children who could probably survive in the Arctic with nothing but a match and a boiled boot. They are, in every sense, experts at surviving Victorian winters. You learn things. How to turn a metal basin into a space heater using coals and a layer of bricks. how to line your coat with newspaper so the heat stays close to your skin, how to sleep standing up if the floor's too wet, how to pretend you're not hungry when someone else gets the last bite. And Tom's got all the tricks. See, you wear socks over your gloves if they're thin, they say. Keeps the wind from sneaking up your sleeves. Also, if you find any dead rats, don't just chuck 'em, skin 'em. Fur's still warm. You try to look unfazed. You fail. That's when you realise this is their world. This snowstorm isn't a freak event for them. It's just the newest version of the same fight they've always been in. Gas, no gas, coal, no coal, doesn't matter. They've been cold their whole lives. The only difference is now the rest of the city finally noticed. Tom shows you how to make a penny stove, a tiny fire trap of a heater built from 2 tin cans, some wax and bits of string. It's genius. It's dangerous. You'll be making one tomorrow. You also learn about the warmth spots across the city. Secret corners with broken vents, boiler exhausts or abandoned greenhouses still holding heat. There's a steam grate near the library, Tom says. If you sit just right, it feels like a radiator. Smells like cabbage, though. Another kid mentions an abandoned greenhouse where the glass traps heat even through the storm. It's like summer in there, they claim, which is definitely a lie. But no one corrects them. And for a moment, sitting in the broken wash house surrounded by smoke and sock lint and laughter that sounds half feral, you feel something you haven't in days. Not alone. There's even an attempt at entertainment. One of the older kids pulls out a harmonica with exactly 2 working notes and starts playing what might be God Save the Queen, or might be Mary Had a Little Lamb. Either way, no one minds. A girl claps along using 2 broken spoons. Someone else tells a joke about a chimney sweep, a vicar and a frozen goat that makes absolutely no sense, but gets a laugh anyway. Then, without ceremony, it's bedtime. The fires are banked, the basins covered, and the kids curl up wherever they can. You're handed a mostly dry blanket and a corner near the wall that doesn't leak too badly. Tom falls asleep beside you in seconds, mouth open, snoring softly through a crooked tooth. You lie there, eyes on the ceiling, watching frost gather along the beams. Your toes are sore, your arms ache from mending socks, but your body is warm, and the air is still. No coughing, no wheezing, just the faint crackle of embers and the sound of survival. Out in the city, the gas is still gone, but in here, in a half-collapsed laundry full of half-wild kids, there's a little fire and a little peace. And for tonight, that's enough. You wake to the smell of something burning, not in a panic-inducing way. There's no smoke choking your lungs or fumes licking at the rafters, but in a someone tried to make breakfast and mostly failed kind of way. You sit up, your blanket sliding off your shoulders, and immediately miss the warmth it offered. The wash house is still standing, barely, and the kids are already up, buzzing with the kind of energy only the underfed and unbreakable seem to possess. Tom waves a bit of blackened something in your face. Toast, they announce proudly. Kinda. You take it. It's a slice of bread charred to the consistency of roof tile on one side and still frozen on the other. You chew anyway. Your teeth complain, but your stomach thanks you, sort of. Across the room, someone's boiling water in a metal bucket, and it smells faintly of charcoal and desperation. Tea's up next, Tom says. Real stuff, maybe. You squint at the bucket. What kind? Brown? Fair enough. The water does eventually turn into tea, or something pretending to be. It's brewed with tea dust from the bottom of a tin, dried orange peels, and what might be a bay leaf someone found in a drawer. It tastes like memories of tea, but it's hot, and that's all that matters. There's a moment, just after your first sip, where something shifts. Your bones sigh, your shoulders drop half an inch. You can actually feel your body deciding it's okay to live another day. No one in this storm survives without tea. It's not just a beverage here, it's an infrastructure. It's how people gather, how they share heat, how they do business, how they mourn and gossip and strategize. You've seen people argue over the proper way to steep it like generals debating troop positions, and when everything else is broken, the gas lines, the law, the churches, someone always finds a way to boil water. You leave the wash house that morning with a warm belly and a piece of toast stashed in your pocket for later. Tom stays behind, claiming they were going to check on the pigeon situation, which you choose not to question. The streets are quieter today, not because they're empty, but because everyone's voices have gone hoarse. You pass a group of men huddled around a barrel fire. each holding a tin mug of steaming brew. They don't even look up when you walk by. They just sip and stare into the flames like monks in silent prayer. You make your way toward a familiar spot, Miss Lillian's parlour. Something in you craves that absurd, elegant nonsense again. And warmth. Mostly warmth. She answers the door with a candle in one hand and a fur stole draped around her shoulders. The stole is clearly from a curtain, but she's wearing it like it came from Harrods. "You look like a chimney," she says. "Come in, the water's just boiled." Inside, it's tea time again. No biscuits this time. Just the real deal, brewed dark and rich and slightly smoky. You don't ask what's in it. You don't care. It's hot. You sit by the stove, now running on chopped up piano keys, and sip in silence. Miss Lillian gives a little monologue while she stirs. "You know, in all my years, I've never known a storm to last this long. Not like this. Not with the gas out. Not with the silence." You nod. You've stopped talking much yourself. The storm has made conversation feel extravagant. She smiles faintly. "Did you know the British consume more tea per capita than nearly any other country? Even in times of war, we import it like it's oxygen. There are records from the Crimean front, soldiers boiling muddy water with boot polish just to simulate the flavour. You believe it. After only a few days in this world, you'd stab someone for a good cup. You know why we do it?" she asks, sitting down across from you, steam curling around her face. "Why we cling to tea like it's sacred." You shake your head. "'Cause it's control," she says simply. "It's ritual. Boil water, add leaves, wait, sip. In a world that won't stop spinning, tea stays put. It makes a strange kind of sense. Every street you've passed, every alleyway, there's someone hunched over a cup. At the apothecary, they offered tea with every remedy. At the factory, workers swigged it between shifts, not even tasting it, just needing the heat. At the wash house, it was made from who knows what, but it still got passed around like gold. There's even a fringe theory you overheard once, half joke, half true, that the British Empire was powered by tea, not by guns or steam or colonial fervour, but by endless cups of bitter, bracing brew. It kept people moving, kept them civil, kept them awake. You finish your cup and thank Miss Lillian. She insists you take a small pouch of dried leaves with you, an ancient blend from the back of her pantry. "Might taste like old sharks," she says, "but it'll still brew." You walk back through the streets with it in your pocket, the soft rustle of the paper like a secret weapon. You spot someone crying in a doorway, an older woman alone clutching a photo in her lap. You kneel beside her, hand her the pouch without a word and move on. She doesn't stop you, just clutches it like a prayer. Back at the wash house, Tom's back and grinning. "Pigeon situation resolved," they say cryptically. "Also, guess what I got?" They pull out a dented metal teapot, clearly scavenged from somewhere. Found it in the rubble of the old bakery. Bit crusty, but it holds water. It's beautiful. It's ugly. It's perfect. You boil a pot over the basin fire that night, brewing your first solo batch. It smells like burnt grass and disappointment. But it's hot. Everyone gets a cup, even the quiet kid in the corner with the cough. And for a moment, in the middle of a storm that won't end, in a wash house full of orphans and misfits and survivors, you're a tea master, a very cold one. But still, the teapot survives the night. That alone feels like a miracle. No one knocks it over, no one melts it, no one tries to trade it for a rat fur muffler or a slab of beef tallow. By morning it's still there, resting proudly on the metal basin like a crown on a smoke-stained throne. And when Tom sees it, they salute. "We protect the kettle," they say solemnly, as if it's a holy relic. You don't argue. You've all seen what this snow can do. Overnight the storm shifted again. You can hear it in the creaks of the buildings and the sudden alarming groans coming from rooftops. The snow's no longer fluffy. It's become wet and heavy, the kind that clings to eaves and presses on beams. The washhouse holds, but it sags in one corner now. A line of cracks snakes up one wall like frostbite on brick. You don't mention it. Everyone sees it. No one wants to talk about it. Breakfast is thin, a shared piece of stale bread, rubbed with something vaguely resembling goose fat. Someone swears it came from an actual goose. Someone else suggests it's probably candle drippings. You eat it anyway. Energy is energy. You spend the morning repairing blankets with Tom, who's taken to calling you Professor Patch, and who has absolutely zero stitching ability but an uncanny knack for inventing names for things that already have perfectly fine names. That's not thread, you say, watching them try to sew with wire. Is now, they reply. Then around midday a sound rumbles through the city like a distant warning. A deep muffled crack followed by shouting. You rush to the alley. Everyone's out in the street already, necks craned, staring at the skyline. It's not smoke this time, it's snow. A whole rooftop just collapsed. You can see it from here, the structure 3 buildings down, a long, narrow tenement with a chimney stack that's now lying sideways in a pile of ice and rubble. It looks like someone dropped a sledgehammer from the sky. People are running, shouting, digging. You don't wait for orders, you just go. The building is caved in at the centre, and the front wall is buckled outward like it's trying to flee the scene. Plaster dust coats everything. Broken glass glitters in the snow. The air smells like lime and fear. You join a group clawing at the debris. No one speaks. It's too loud for words, just grunts, strained, breathed and thinning, the crunch of wood being forced apart. Someone finds a hand, not moving. They cover it and keep digging. You scrape your fingers raw trying to lift part of a beam. Your arms burn, your lungs seize. You're sweating under your coat even as the wind stings your neck. Eventually someone uncovers a man who's alive, barely. His legs are pinned and his lips are blue, but his eyes open. He whispers one word: children. Everyone freezes, then doubles their pace. It takes 2 hours to find them. 3 children, all huddled in a corner under what used to be a kitchen table. The table probably saved their lives. They're half-conscious, shivering. Their faces smeared with soot and something sticky you hope is soup. They're passed up hand to hand through the ruins. When you finally step back, your knees give out. You sit in the snow, breathing hard, heart pounding, body shaking, not from cold this time, but from sheer adrenaline. No one died this time, but that building's done, and it's not the only one. The whispers start immediately. People begin eyeing their own roofs, wondering how much weight they can carry. Someone says, "My ceiling creaked last night." Another says, "I saw cracks by the chimney." Someone else, very quietly, says, "We should leave." But where? Where do you go when the whole city's cracking? Back at the wash house, you gather around the basin again. The fire's low but steady. The teapot is warm. The water boils. You make tea in silence. Then Tom breaks it. "We have to fix our roof." You glance up. The rafters are visibly bowed now. The frost has crept in like mould, and that long crack has doubled in length. "Won't hold through another night," says one of the older kids. "Not if the snow keeps falling like this." Someone suggests climbing up and shoveling it off. Someone else says, "We'll fall through." The debate spirals into fear. Then silence again. Finally, you stand up. "We have to try." Because you've seen what happens when roofs give up. You felt it in your knees, in your lungs, in your chest. You saw the man's face when he said children, like it was the only word he still believed in. And you're not going to let that happen here. Not to Tom, not to the teapot, not to the good little tribe of soot-covered survivors who've made you one of their own. So you climb. The stairs to the roof are icy and steep. You move slowly, careful not to slip. At the top, you push open the trapdoor and are immediately hit by a wave of freezing wind and blinding whiteness. The roof is worse than you thought. Snowdrifts 3 feet high, ice crusted over the tiles, the weight pressing down like a full-grown elephant in a fur coat. You lower a rope, tie it off, and shout for help. One by one, others join you. Tom brings a broken broom. Another kid has a rusted shovel. You start digging. Slow at first, then faster. You move snow like your life depends on it, because it does. You clear it in strips, working from the top down, tossing it over the side in clouds of powder and ice. Your arms go numb, your fingers cramp, but you don't stop. And when the sun starts to fade behind the grey haze, the roof is light again. The pressure's off. The beams groan with relief, and so do you. Back inside, the fire seems a little brighter. The crack in the wall's still there, but it hasn't grown. The air is still bitter, but it moves easier now, like the building's breathing again. Someone hands you tea. Tom grins. "Roof hero," they say, offering you a badly made medal cut from tin and strung on twine. You laugh, and for the first time in days, it sounds like a real one. The first thing you notice when you wake the next morning is the silence. Not the usual kind. London's been half muted by snow for days now. No, this is deeper. Hollow. like someone took the city and turned the volume down to 0. No shouting, no clanging of buckets, not even Tom's early morning theatrics, just the faint hiss of your breath and the soft rustle of something shifting above your head. You lie still, ears straining, and then you hear it, a slow, whispering crinkle. From the walls, you sit up fast. The others are doing the same, blinking, bundled in their patchwork cocoons. The washhouse feels colder today, somehow more ancient. You rub your hands together, noticing how brittle your skin's become, cracked, stretched tight like a parchment. Then it happens again, that slow, dry rustling sound. "Is that paper?" someone whispers. It is. You shuffle over to the far wall, the one that was cracking, and pull back the scrap of cloth someone hung to keep the draft out. Behind it, packed between the wood slats, is a layer of old yellowing newspapers. Victorian insulation, apparently. Not exactly regulation, but functional, at least until now. Tom scurries over. "Look at this!" They yank out a page with such gusto that a small cascade of dust falls from the wall like dandruff from the ghost of a librarian. January 12th, 1862, they read. Says here a baker got fined for overly loud whistling. Another kid pulls a sheet from the opposite side. Here's one about a man who claimed to own the moon. Sold bits of it to fund his hat business. Someone else laughs, a real laugh, and suddenly everyone's ripping into the walls like archaeologists with frostbite. The insulation crinkles and foliogs, revealing headlines, advertisements, sketches, even a few odd love notes scrawled in margins. Most of it's gibberish, some of it's gold. You pull out a page with the heading, "How to Stay Warm Without Coal." Well now, that's useful. You read aloud. Line your floors with straw, your walls with news, your socks with cotton rags. Heat bricks in the oven and place them at your feet. Burn tallow if no oil is found. If no tallow, use wood. If no wood, pray. Tom grins. That's the spirit. The washhouse becomes a makeshift reading room for the next hour, full of coughing historians. Someone finds an old advertisement for goose fat ointment. Another finds a recipe for a winter cake made entirely from oats and hope. One page has a handwritten list of what appears to be someone's life goals, one of which simply reads, "Find out what cod liver oil actually does." But it's not just entertainment. These walls are giving you something real, information. This is how people before you survived. And not just random people, Londoners. They didn't have gas, or not consistently. They had these tricks, this wisdom, this slow-burning stubbornness. You start making a list as to what you've learned from the newspaper walls. 1. Bricks stay warm longer if you wrap them in flannel. 2. Cardboard in your boots helps with wet snow. 3. Boil onion skins for a vaguely nutritious broth. 4. If your coat's thin, wear it backwards. Keeps your chest warmer. Elsie arrives around midday. Back from the factory shift, her cheeks red and her fingers grey at the tips. She listens to the chaos, the laughter, the rustling of yellow paper, and leans against the doorway like she's stepped into another world. "Are we reading for warmth now?" she asks. "In a way," you say. Tom holds up a page like a banner. "The walls are talking." Elsie arches an eyebrow. "Well, tell them to shut up and help me with the fire." That evening, the fire is stronger than it's been in days. Someone found a broken desk in an alley and dragged it back piece by piece. Another kid brought a stack of ledgers they swiped from a bank. Turns out old accounting books burn beautifully. There's something poetic about that. And the washhouse is warmer now, not just from flame, but from layering. You've patched the walls with a new collage of newspaper, hung up extra cloth, even stuffed socks with dry paper. It's ridiculous. It's brilliant. The air still bites, but it no longer tries to take your breath away. Tom makes a game out of insulation hunting, running into abandoned buildings to rip newsprint from walls like some kind of cold-weather raccoon. They return once with a full roll of faded wallpaper, triumphant. "It's got flowers," they say, as if the aesthetics are what matter most. But honestly, it helps. When the walls are covered in print and florals and ancient headlines, the place feels less like a ruin and more like a home, a strange patchwork paper-shelled home. As the night deepens, someone starts reading aloud again, this time a serialized mystery story about a missing glove and a deceitful carriage driver. It's absurd. Half the plot makes no sense, and the characters all have names like Marmaduke or Tristram, but it passes the time. Later, you stare at a headline stuck beside your corner of the wall. Experts predict war will be over by summer. You wonder if they were right. Probably not. You lie back against the pile of rags, the heat of the fire stretching out toward your feet like a lazy cat. The walls rustle occasionally as the wind shifts outside. The storm hasn't stopped. It hasn't even weakened. But the building feels stronger now, held together by paste paper and sheer communal will. Somewhere deep in the city you hear the distant rumble of another collapse. It's faint, not near, but enough to remind you that safety is still fragile. The warmth you've gathered tonight may not last through tomorrow, but the knowledge will. You drift off reading a scrap of a weather column from 1875. It claims that winter too shall pass. You hope that guy wasn't lying. It happens just before dawn, not with drama, not with shouting, but with the quiet horror of necessity. You wake with a full bladder and nowhere to go. You stare at the ceiling for a moment, mentally negotiating with your body. Maybe you can fall back asleep. Maybe you can ignore it. Maybe the problem will solve itself. It does not. You sit up slowly, wrapped in your stiff layers, the cold biting at your cheeks and the tip of your nose. The fire in the basin has died down to a faint red glow, and the rest of the washhouse is still. Everyone's bundled into their corners like silent breathing laundry piles. Someone nearby mumbles in their sleep. Another coughs just once, and then silence again. You glance toward the doorway and do the math. There's no chance of reaching a proper privy in this weather. The public latrine down the alley is probably frozen shut. You remember the cracked chamber pot someone broke yesterday. There's a backup somewhere, maybe the old laundry bucket. But someone was using that for foot soaking, and it's full of charcoal water now, which leaves you with the question no one ever talks about during Victorian snowstorms, even in historical novels. What exactly do people do when it's too cold to go outside and their dignity has frostbite? The answer, apparently, is negotiate with the chamber pot. You stumble around the washhouse in your boots and blanket cape, trying not to wake anyone. Your breath fogs in the air like you're exhaling secrets. Eventually, in the far corner near the leaning wall, you find the backup, a dented metal bucket with a lid, labelled, somewhat optimistically, night use only. Someone has scrawled a drawing of a moon on it. Cute. You hesitate. The Victorian version of indoor plumbing is not romantic. It's awkward, it's unsanitary, and it absolutely reeks. But it's that or risk freezing your nether regions off in the street. And let's be real, hygiene died 2 weeks ago. Pride died the day you wore socks on your hands. You do what needs to be done, muttering apologies to the bucket, and then seal the lid with a look that says we will never speak of this again. Unfortunately, you're not the only one in this boat. As people stir awake, the washhouse becomes a slow-moving ballet of people politely pretending they don't notice what the others are doing. The bucket queue starts. Tom, bless them, turns it into a system. 5 minutes per person, they declare. Unless you're ill, then you get 7. Unless it's that kind of illness, then use the alley and bring back snow for the love of God. Elsie returns from her factory shift right in the middle of this delicate social ballet and mutters, "And to think I used to have a bathroom with a flush handle. We were gods once." Someone else laughs. "The old gods are dead." You all nod. Later that day, the bucket situation becomes a real crisis. The snows block the path to the alley, and no one's brave enough to use the frozen stairwell to the roof. You have 3 buckets now, but one's cracked, and the smell is starting to linger. You try to burn some pine needles to cover the scent. It doesn't help. Miss Lillian shows up for her usual tea visit and immediately wrinkles her nose. "It smells like someone insulted the Queen's chambermaid in here." You offer her a spot near the basin fire. She sits down and pulls a lace handkerchief from her coat, dabs her nose like a lady at a funeral, and announces, "I brought something for the atmosphere." She pulls out a tiny glass vial and uncorks it. Lavender. Real lavender oil. A few drops on the edge of her scarf, and suddenly the washhouse smells less like doom. Everyone scoots closer. She shares a story from her youth about using chamber pots in winter, how her sister once dropped one out the window by accident, and it hit a constable in the hat. You're not sure it's true, but it makes everyone laugh until someone nearly chokes. That evening, you decide to try something radical. A bucket rotation schedule. It's chaos, of course. People forget, take too long, or refuse to write their names on the list. Someone writes Queen Victoria and draws a tiny crown. Tom adds Prime Minister of P. You suspect they're both the same person. You assign 2 kids to snow collection duty, hauling fresh snow inside in baskets so it can melt for hand washing and bucket rinsing. It's tedious, freezing work, but they sing songs while they do it and act like they're a part of some strange noble service. And honestly, it is noble. In this weather, basic sanitation is heroism. You talk to Elsie about finding another chamber pot, maybe stealing one from an abandoned boarding house. She just laughs. Those are worth more than silver right now. Saw one being traded for a sack of coal yesterday. Supply and demand, 1880s style. You try to make improvements. You hang a scrap of blanket around the bucket corner for privacy. Someone adds a little drawing of a smiley face and a sign that reads, "Do your business like a gentleman." The next morning, someone leaves a fresh sprig of dried mint by the bucket. A small offering, a thank you, or a protest, possibly all three. And through all this, no one complains, not really. Because complaining means hope, means you expect better. But now, this is just part of survival. The cold stripped away politeness, but it left behind community. You're all in this together, sweating over fires, patching walls with newspapers, trading mint leaves for 20 seconds of privacy. The wash house becomes its own strange society. You have rules, rotations, a sense of shared burden. No one's proud of the bucket system, but no one shames it either. It's necessity. It's the ugly little truth no one paints in historical portraits. You fall asleep that night curled up near the basin fire, arms wrapped around your legs, the smell of ash and lavender mixing faintly in the air. The walls rustle with old newsprint, the wind moans against the broken rafters, and someone lets out a soft snore across the room. You've never felt more human. Because it turns out survival isn't glamorous. It's awkward, it's undignified. It's a bucket in a corner, a candle stub, and a system held together with string and sarcasm. And yet somehow it works. You start noticing it around the edges first. Not pain exactly, more like the slow erasure of sensation. It begins in your fingers. They stop tingling. That sounds like a good thing, until you realise you can't feel the cup you're holding. You're gripping it tightly, but it may as well be air. You watch as the tea sloshes slightly with each movement, your fingers curled around it, motionless, disconnected. You set it down carefully, quietly. You don't say anything. Later, it's your toes. You wiggle them inside your boots. Nothing. You stomp your foot, trying to jolt them back to life, but there's no spark, no flicker. Just silence down there. You take your boots off by the basin fire and poke your toe through the hole in your sock. Still nothing. Tom notices. "You dead?" they ask casually, squinting at your foot. You force a smile. Getting there. They don't laugh. They've seen this before. You should tell Elsie. You don't. Instead, you wrap your feet in dry cloth to layer on more newspaper and stick them as close to the basin as you can without setting yourself on fire. It helps. Kind of, not really. The numbness fades in and out now. You tell yourself it's fine, that you're adapting. But deep down you know what it is. Hypothermia, not the dramatic drop dead on the pot kind. The slow creeping version. The kind where your body gets so cold it starts cutting off pieces of you to preserve the core. It's strategic, efficient, terrifying. And it's made worse by the fact that no one really talks about it. You hear whispers about people found in alleyways curled up peacefully like they'd just decided to rest. Blankets pulled tight, hands in pockets, gone. No screams, no struggle, just a slow surrender. You begin checking the others. The boy in the corner who hasn't moved much since yesterday, he's still breathing, but his skin is pale and waxy. The girl who stopped eating, she says she's not hungry, but you know that's one of the signs. Cold burns up appetite, then memory, then muscle. You catch yourself staring at your own hands too long. They don't look like yours anymore. The knuckles are cracked, the nails purple. The skin's so dry it flakes when you flex. You feel detached, like your body's a rental you're behind on payments for. You try to joke about it. Anyone else feel like an overcooked turkey left in the snow? No one laughs. That's the thing with hypothermia, it kills your humour first. Miss Lillian arrives later than usual, her face hidden behind a scarf, her movements stiff. She peels off her gloves and immediately pulls them back on again. No gas. Still, she says, her voice brittle. Tried the church on Wellclose Square, pipes frozen. Vicar's letting people into sleep, but it's colder inside than out. She doesn't sit this time, just paces slowly, rubbing her arms. You can see it in her too, the beginning stages, the shaking that's not nerves, the way she stares too long at the fire. Elsie calls a meeting, which sounds more official than it is. It's just everyone huddled near the basin, teeth chattering in rough sync. "We've got to warm up," she says bluntly. Fast, Tom raises a hand. How? We build more fires, smaller ones. Keep them burning in shifts. Someone points to the stack of burnable materials. We're running out. Elsie nods. Then we gather more. The wash house splits into teams. You're on the scavenge crew. Your job? Find anything that burns and isn't nailed down. Wood, fabric, rope, old boxes. If it catches flame and doesn't explode, you bring it. The streets are quieter than ever. That's the most unsettling part. The snow's not falling anymore, just floating, gentle, constant, a hush over everything. But it's too quiet. No carts, no shouting, no distant bells. You pass a window where someone once burned a chair. Now it's empty, just a rectangle of soot on the floor and a broken leg sticking out of the snow like a splinter. A man stumbles out of a doorway ahead of you, no hat, no coat, just a shirt and trousers. You call out to him, but he doesn't respond. He moves like someone in a trance, walking slow and stiff, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. He turns a corner and disappears. You don't follow. You find a collapsed fence behind an abandoned greengrocer's and pry it apart for wood. The splinters get under your nails, but you barely notice. Your hands are past that now. Numb or aching, there's no in-between anymore. Back at the wash house, you set up a second fire in a metal pail. Someone else builds a third in an old bread tin. Soon the whole room is dotted with flickering light. Smoke curls upward in uneven spirals, gathering at the beams. You open a small hole in the roof to let it out. It's risky. Heat escapes too, but you have no choice. No one wants to die from lung soot. The air gets warmer. Not by much, but enough to pull people back from the edge. Someone plays the harmonica again, 2 notes, the only ones that still biyuk. It's not music, but it's something. You drink weak tea, now made with melted snow and stale leaves. You wrap yourself in every piece of cloth you can find. You sit with your feet pressed against a hot brick and stare into the fire like it owes you an apology. And still, the cold presses in. You can feel it at night, waiting just beyond the fabric walls. It has patience, it has time, and it doesn't need to rush. You check your fingers every few hours, squeezing them, watching for blood return. It takes longer now. That's not good, but you keep going, because what else is there? You help others check themselves too, pinch skin, test reflexes, share warmth. It's a strange, intimate ritual, people huddling together, not out of affection, but to hold each other inside the fight. The cold wants to divide you, isolate you. You don't let it. You dream strange things, of hot baths, of radiators purring like cats, of sitting by a gas fire and hearing the gentle click as it lights. In the dream you reach for it, but your fingers pass through. You wake with tears frozen on your face. In the morning, Tom taps your shoulder. Look, they say, pointing to the wall. Someone's written in charcoal right above the hearth. If you're still warm, you're still here. You nod. It's not much, but it's true. By now, the desperation isn't just visible, it's transactional. Survival has shifted fully into barter mode, and warmth has become the city's black market currency. You feel it before you see it. There's a change in how people look at you on the street now, how long their eyes linger on your boots, your gloves, your scarf. No one sees people anymore. They see items, layers, value. If you're still wearing something dry and mostly intact, you're walking inventory. It's mid-morning when Elsie sends you and Tom to the market square. Not to buy anything, obviously, but to see if anyone's dealing. Blankets, she says, coats, candles, anything. Tom grins. Can I trade insults for mittens? Elsie doesn't laugh. You set off, boots crunching through the glassy snow crust, your breath puffing in uneven bursts. The sky is dull metal again, smeared with the grey of another storm threatening to roll in. The sun hasn't made a proper appearance in days, just occasional flashes behind clouds like it's checking in to see if you're still miserable. When you reach the market, it's a ghost town, except it isn't. All the official stalls are shut, their awnings collapsed under ice, their wares long gone or looted. But tucked into corners, clustered under makeshift tents and melted canvas, people are doing business, quietly, carefully, eyes scanning for constables, though it's unlikely any are still patrolling. You've entered the underground layer of the Snowstorm, the black market of warm things. It's not just the usual dodgy characters either. There are mothers with children clinging to their skirts, elderly men wrapped in rugs, former shopkeepers who now huddle behind wooden crates, trying to swap cracked candles for wool scraps. You see one man carefully inspecting a pair of used boots. tapping the soles like he knows exactly how many miles they have left. Tom taps your arm and points to a woman near the edge of the square, sitting behind a tiny table covered in blankets. Not just any blankets either, real ones. Heavy layered, patch-stitched wool, the kind that probably came from a hotel or some mansion's guest bedroom. You approach slowly. "What's the price?" you ask. She eyes you. "What have you got?" You open your coat and reveal your best bargaining chip. The mint tin with 2 remaining tea leaves, your last half lozenge from the apothecary, and the bit of lavender oil Miss Lillian slipped into your hand when she wasn't looking. Her gift, now potential trade bait. The woman stares. "All that for 1 blanket?" You nod. "And 1 match." She lifts an eyebrow, then shrugs. "Done." You pass the items, and she hands over a rolled blanket bound with twine. You hold it in your hands, stunned by its weight. It's warmer than most people's entire wardrobe right now. Tom, meanwhile, is haggling over a scarf that smells like fireplace smoke and cinnamon. "He wants 3 buttons," they whisper. "I've only got 2 and a nail." "Give him your hat," you say. Tom clutches their flat cap like it's a crown. "How dare you?" The scarf guy eventually settles for 2 buttons, a nail, and a riddle. You walk away with 1 blanket and a scarf that may or may not be cursed, but you don't care. It's worth it. Then you notice something odd. A man at the far end of the square standing behind a small fire in a metal dish. He's not selling anything, just standing, watching. People approach, whisper, hand over coins or scraps of food, and he gives them a few minutes by the fire. "That's it. 3 minutes. Just enough time to warm your hands," Tom mutters, "charging people to stand near heat. That's bleak, innit?" You agree, but you're also jealous. You head back to the wash house, blanket folded under your arm like stolen treasure. When you arrive, you're greeted like a returning hero. The others gather around, eyes wide. No one touches it at first, as if afraid it might vanish. Elsie inspects the stitching. "Real wool?" she says, running her fingers along the edge. "This'll go far." You cut it into 3 strips, 1 for wrapping around shoulders, 1 for patching into badinrink, 1 for the kid in the corner whose skin has turned the colour of parchment. The rest of the day turns into a full-blown barter festival. People dig through their bundles for tradable things: buttons, coins, dried herbs, bits of preserved lemon peel, feathers for stuffing, bits of soap. One kid brings out a single sugar cube, just 1. They stare at it like it's a crown jewel. Miss Lillian arrives with 2 candle stubs and a belt buckle. "Got this from a violinist who'd lost his violin," she explains. "He didn't want to carry the guilt anymore." Tom manages to trade a broken comb for a length of ribbon. "Gonna wear it like a medal," they say, and do exactly that. You start keeping a ledger, not for money, but for trade fairness. It becomes a washhouse economy. 1 button equals 1 hot stone. 2 stones equal 10 minutes in the warmest corner. A half biscuit can get you a candle stub, but only if it's not mouldy. Elsie watches all this with an amused but tired smile. "We've turned into rats in a very polite cage." You nod, but you also hand her the last piece of preserved lemon, traded earlier for a half sock and some twine. She eats it slowly, eyes closed, like it's some royal delicacy. That night the fires burn a little longer, not because you have more fuel, but because you all agreed, together, to pull what you had. Shared heat, shared stories, shared scraps. Tom even trades 2 verses of a made-up song for an extra corner near the brick pile. You fall asleep under a patchwork of cloth and warmth, your feet pressed against a wrapped bottle of warm water, traded for a poem about horses you don't remember writing. In this cold, this broken world, currency is fluid. It's not about value. It's about need, about trust, about knowing what a warm scarf or half a candle means to someone who hasn't felt their toes in 2 days. You close your eyes, and someone whispers the new washhouse motto: "No one freezes alone." You believe it, because tonight you are not alone, and that makes all the difference. You're woken by the sound of tearing. Not a scream, not a crash, just the slow, unmistakable sound of fabric giving up. It takes a moment to orient yourself, to remember you're not in a proper bed, not wrapped in anything plush, not safe. You're on the floor of a half-collapsed Victorian washhouse, surrounded by a pile of rag-stitched humanity, and something's gone wrong. You sit up fast. The fire's out. The room is darker than usual, colder. The heat has fled like a guilty secret. You hear another sound, soft scraping, then another tear, then a crack. Tom is already awake, eyes wide, whispering, "It's the roof." You don't need to be told twice. The snow outside has been relentless for days now, and whatever miracle kept your makeshift shelter standing is rapidly disintegrating. The roof groans again, an awful stretching moan, like the bones of an ancient creature too old to carry its own weight. You scramble to your feet and start shaking the others awake. Out! Now! Elsie bolts upright halfway to a shout, already grabbing the nearest kids and pulling them toward the exit. Blankets, bricks, coats, grab what you can. The floorboards creak as everyone starts moving, slow from sleep, slower from cold, minds lagging behind their bodies. A chunk of plaster drops from the ceiling and smashes onto the floor, sending up a plume of dust and snow that blinds you for a second. Someone coughs, someone cries, and then the wall gives way. Not all of it, just a corner, but it's enough. Wind barrels in, howling like a banshee, snow following it in horizontal gusts. The paper insulation flutters violently, rips free in places. The fire pit collapses under the sudden draft, scattering ash across the room. "Everyone out!" Elsie's voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. "Leave it all, just go!" The exit's narrow, just a side door half blocked by crates and snow. You throw your shoulder into it, wedge it open, and start pushing people through. Tom's behind you, dragging the tiny kid from the corner. Miss Lillian wraps a scarf around the child's face and whispers, "Don't look back." You make it outside just as the roof finally cracks. It doesn't explode or collapse all at once. It just folds. The centre buckles in like a belly caving to hunger, and the rafters slide in slow, reluctant surrender. Snow and wood pour inward with a dull, heavy thump. No one's hurt. But the wash house is gone. You stand in the street, snow slicing across your face, watching your only shelter turn into rubble. Tom breaks the silence first. "Well, that's one way to redecorate." It gets a laugh, a weak one, but it's a lifeline. Elsie doesn't waste time. "Grab what you can from the pile, anything dry, anything solid, then we move." You dig into the wreckage with frozen hands, pulling out bricks, bundled cloth, one very confused rat. You find the kettle, dented but intact. No, Tom lifts it like Excalibur. She lives. 15 minutes later, you're back in the alley. Not a proper shelter, but at least the walls still stand. There's a covered stairwell leading down to a basement coal chute. Mostly dry, only partially collapsed. It smells like mould and wet ash. It's perfect. You help sweep snow out of the space, light a stub of candle, and rig a tarp as a roof. It's cramped, barely room for 5, let alone 10, but no one complains. You've all downgraded your expectations so many times, you're basically subterranean at this point. And now you are. The fires are harder to build here. Less ventilation, more risk, but you manage it. Carefully, slowly, one ember at a time, the warmth creeps in like a guest unsure if they're invited. You set the kettle down, fill it with the last of the snowmelt, and let it start heating. No tea leaves, just hot water. Still counts. By nightfall, the wind has gotten worse. The streets are impassable now, clogged with snowdrifts and collapsed beams. You hear someone in the distance shouting for help, but it's too far and you can't leave. It's a cruel, constant test. Every decision you make leaves someone else in the cold. In the chute, the fire burns low and orange, reflecting off soot-streaked walls. You sit pressed against Tom, who's shivering despite 6 layers and 3 scarves. They mutter, "Should have stolen more blankets." You whisper back, "Should have stolen the whole mansion." You drink your hot water like it's brandy, letting the steam coat your face, pretending you can feel it deep in your bones. Someone passes around the last of the bread, a few stale crusts that taste like chalk, but you chew them slowly, reverently, like they're the finest loaves in London. Elsie wraps a child in the only dry coat left and says, "We'll fix it tomorrow, or the next day. Just have to keep building." But you all know it won't be fixed, not properly. The wash house is gone, and the snow's still falling. Later in the dark, Tom whispers, "What's the plan?" You don't answer, because there is no plan. There's just the next hour, the next sip, the next fire, the next patch of warmth you can hold on to. There's talk. Somewhere in the city, of a larger shelter, an old warehouse near the docks, cleared and repurposed. Supposed to have blankets, stoves, even medical supplies. But it's days away on foot, through streets where roofs are falling and nothing's certain. So you hunker down, you wrap your feet in someone else's shirt, you press your back to the wall to steal its residual warmth. You listen to the wind scream above you, and the fire crackle beside you, and the slow, soft breathing of people too stubborn to die. And you think, this is what it means to live in a snow-covered city with no gas, no heat, no plan, just each other. Just this. By now, bread has become a fantasy, a whispered memory, something people talk about like they used to talk about summer. You hear it in voices, the way someone says crust like it's a poem, the way another person closes their eyes when describing butter, even if they haven't seen any since before the first frost. You've eaten things in the past few days that barely qualify as food. You've chewed through biscuit ends so stale they could have doubled as roof tiles. Someone passed around a tin of boiled carrots yesterday, and you swear it might have been orange chalk. But this morning you wake up hungry in a new way. Not just stomach-empty hungry. No, this is deeper. This is system failure, hungry. You feel it in your bones, your muscles like ropes, your head thick, your limbs slow to obey. The body begins its quiet rebellion, and that's when you realise the bread is gone. All of it. Elsie confirms it as soon as she's up. We've got 1 turnip and half a jar of what I hope is jam. Unless it's shoe polish. Could be both, Tom offers, sniffing the jar with theatrical suspicion. You sit in the coal chute, surrounded by people in layers of rags, the remainders of the fire still glowing faintly, and you realise you've hit the next stage. The warmth war is old news, now comes the hunger war, and just like heat, food is no longer something you find, it's something you fight for. There's talk in the street, always is. You hear about a bakery near Whitechapel still operating, the oven fueled by furniture, the loaves going for the price of your soul or close enough. You hear rumours about a cart spotted heading toward the docks, full of black bread and guarded like royal treasure. Someone even swears they saw a man in a stovepipe hat trading sacks of flour for gold rings and family heirlooms. Sounds dramatic, until it isn't. You and Tom venture out, the air stiff and sharp, your breath freezing mid-sentence. The snow is packed high now, turned grey and lumpy, hiding dangers under its crust. You see a broken boot frozen into the ground like an exhibit, a scarf hanging from a window fluttering like a surrender flag. And the city, your city, once so loud and bursting, is silent as a grave. You turn down Redfield Street and see the line before you hear it. Dozens of people, silent, motionless, like statues. They are queuing outside a brick storefront with boarded windows and a flickering lantern over the door. No sign, no shouting, just a single man in a soot-black coat standing in the doorway with a list and a scowl. Tom whispers, "Is this it?" You nod. Must be. You shuffle into the line. The cold finds your ankles, your ribs, your teeth. It burrows into your skin like it knows you're weak now. Everyone here is quiet, too tired to speak, too hungry to complain. The only sound is the occasional cough or a muttered curse. An hour passes, then another. You watch people be turned away, some argue, some plead. A few are handed a crust and told, "That's it, come back next week." Tom says nothing, just keeps rocking back and forth, trying to keep the blood moving in their toes. You reach for their arm at one point, just to feel another pulse, still there. Finally, it's your turn. The man at the door eyes you like you're already a corpse. "Trade or a charity?" he asks. "Trade," you say, too fast. You hold out your offerings, a scrap of cloth, the last stub of candle, and a rusted metal spoon. He looks unimpressed. "Half loaf," he says, "and not the good kind." You take it. It's warm, barely, dense and rough, the crust hard enough to chip a tooth. But it's bread, actual, honest bread. And for a second, just a moment, you want to cry. Tom stares at it with reverence. "Do we eat it now, or—" "No," you say. "We take it back." The walk home feels longer than the way there. Every step is a risk. Every shadow could be someone waiting to take what you're carrying. You clutch the parcel to your chest like a newborn. Tom guards your back, a stick in one hand, teeth bared at any shape that moves. You pass a woman begging in a doorway. Her fingers are blue, her voice is hoarse. You want to stop, you want to break the bread and give her half. But you don't. You keep walking, and it hurts. Back at the chute, you place the bread on the floor like it's an offering. Everyone gathers around. No one speaks. You tear it into pieces, small, unfair, unequal. There's not enough. There's never enough. but each person gets a bite, even the coughing boy. Even Miss Lillian, who takes hers with closed eyes and a whispered thank you. You chew slowly, pretending the crust isn't slicing your gums. You taste yeast, smoke, maybe even salt. Or maybe you're hallucinating flavour now. Someone jokes, "Better than the Queen's dinner," and everyone laughs because what else can you do? Then someone says the thing no one wanted to say. What happens when this runs out? No one answers because the truth is obvious. This city is starving. The coal ran out, the gas gave up, the warmth barely held on, and now the food is following. You lie awake that night with the taste of bread still lingering in your mouth and the weight of guilt pressed into your ribs. You remember that woman in the doorway, her eyes, her hands, and how you walked past her with something she may not survive the night without. You tell yourself you had no choice. You tell yourself you'll help tomorrow. You tell yourself a lot of things, and then you fall asleep with your arms wrapped around your knees and your stomach empty again. You wake up to a sound that doesn't belong in a snowstorm. Bells, faint, uneven, ringing from somewhere far off, bouncing between buildings like they have been thrown, not rung. It takes a moment for your brain to make sense of it. Could be a hallucination, could be hope, or just someone losing their mind with a frying pan and a good arm. Still, the sound slices through the silence like a knife. You and Tom sit up at the same time, blink at each other, and say in sync, "Did you hear that?" The others stir slowly, less from rest and more from instinct. No one truly sleeps anymore. You just shut down for a while and hope to wake again. You all strain to listen, the stillness inside the coal chute so dense that even breathing feels impolite. There it is again, bells, two this time, one short, one long, almost like a pattern. Miss Lillian, eyes barely open, mutters, "Could be church bells." Elsie frowns. No church would be ringing this early, or this out of rhythm. Tom grins. Maybe it's code, rescue code, like pirates. "You think pirates are coming to save us?" you ask, rubbing the frost from your eyelashes. Tom shrugs. Stranger things have happened. They haven't, actually, but you let them have it. After a quick vote, mostly consisting of blank stares and one nod from the kid with the worst cough, you and Tom are nominated to investigate. Again, because apparently being the least dead qualifies you as leadership material. You bundle up in everything you can find, gloves on feet, scarves on knees, the kettle tied to your back with string for good luck, or maybe just as a personal mascot at this point. Outside, the world is whiter, which should be impossible, but the snow is somehow brighter now, more blinding, like it's trying to erase the city completely. The streets are mounded in slow-motion waves, all familiar shapes buried beneath the drifts. You step into the powder and sink up to your thighs, every movement a full-body effort. Still, you move, toward the sound, toward the bells. The noise gets louder as you go, though it disappears and reappears with the wind. It's not coming from above, like a steeple, but ahead, low, metallic, harsh. Then you see it. A cart, not a romantic Victorian carriage, not a sleigh pulled by white horses, but a flatbed wooden cart with iron wheels and a single donkey, so wrapped in cloth it looks like a laundry pile with legs. Beside it stands a man bundled in oilskins, ringing two mismatched bells tied to the ends of rope. He's not shouting, not calling out wares, just ringing. And in the cart, food. You blink twice to be sure. But yes, real food. You see loaves, not many but real. Sacks of something, maybe oats, maybe flour. And crates, sealed stampede crates. They look official. Government surplus, or military stores, or divine intervention. Tom mutters, "We've found the bread ghost." You step forward cautiously. The man eyes you with suspicion, but not hostility. "One ration per household," he says, before you even open your mouth. His voice is deep, tired, but clear. "That's the rule." "What's the cost?" you arm. He looks you over. Then the kettle on your back. "Trade or voucher?" You frown. "Voucher?" From the dock shelter. "Anyone registered gets one. If not, trade." You don't have a voucher. You don't even know what they look like. But Tom steps forward with a pouch of candle shavings and a single silver button. The man inspects it all like a jeweller appraising diamonds. Then he nods. He hands over a paper-wrapped bundle, one loaf of barley bread still warm at the centre, and a cloth sack with something that might be beans, or gravel. It doesn't matter. It's food, you thank him. Tom salutes. You turn to leave, and that's when he speaks again. "Storm's shifting." You pause. "What?" Temperature's dropping faster, pressure's changing, won't hold another week, maybe less. You squint. How do you know? He taps the side of the cart. Wheels froze on this side coming down St. George's. Didn't do that yesterday. Donkey slipped twice near Shoreditch. Air's too dry. Crunch in the snow's sharper. Means the wind's getting colder, deadlier. It's such a specific diagnosis that you have to believe him. He adds, shelters at the docks are still open, but they're closing the road soon. After that, you're on your own. Tom looks up at you. Are we moving? You look down at the loaf in your hands. Warm, solid, temporary. And you know the answer. Yes, we're moving. Back at the chute you announce it, quietly but firmly. Everyone stares, then slowly. They begin packing. What little there is. Blankets, tins, bricks, the kettle, of course. And even a few coals wrapped in paper to carry fire with you. Miss Lillian groans dramatically. I just got comfortable here. Elsie doesn't flinch. We won't survive another roof collapse. And no one argues. That afternoon you prepare to leave. You tie belongings into bundles with twine and strips of curtain. The younger kids are wrapped in layers until they resemble ambulatory pillows. Tom takes lead, proudly wearing the scarf from the trade market like a captain's sash. Before you go, you turn back once, looking at the chute, the soot-black walls, the patchwork tarp, the faint outline of where the fire once lived. It's not a home, but it kept you alive. That counts. And then you walk. Through the snow, past the burned-out bakery and the collapsed tenement, across a bridge that creaks under your weight, toward the docks. The cold follows, of course, but so does hope, because someone out there is still baking bread, still ringing bells, still believing that life continues even when the city is buried. And as long as the bells keep ringing, so do you. You've been walking for nearly 2 hours, and your thighs feel like lead rods. Every step is a negotiation, between your aching muscles, the icy wind trying to saw through your coat, and the snow that now rises past your knees in places. The city isn't just frozen anymore, it's buried. Street signs have vanished. Whole storefronts are sealed behind snowy barricades, like they were never meant to be entered again. London has become one long white corridor with no ceiling, no clear direction, and no promises. Your group is strung out along the road like a ragtag caravan. Tom leads at the front, holding a stick like a walking staff, now affectionately dubbed Sir Pokielot, and occasionally jabbing the snow in front of them to check for hidden drops. You bring up the rear, watching the children for signs of slowing down or stopping altogether. Elsie's in the centre, managing everything with her trademark mix of quiet efficiency and zero patience for drama. Miss Lillian, layered in so many scarves she looks like a wandering fabric shop, shuffles beside you. Is this a death march or a spa retreat? She asks, not entirely sarcastically. Because my paws have never been tighter. You grunt something halfway between a laugh and a sob. In your pack, 2 hard biscuits, a nearly empty flask of melted snow, one charred piece of firewood, kept for sentimental reasons, and the ever-faithful kettle, now dented on one side from the collapse but still functional, though. Like all of you, the journey toward the docks is more than just long, it's surreal. You pass frozen carriages stuck mid-turn, a mannequin in a dress shop window wears a powdered wig of snow and seems to watch you with pity. On a rooftop, someone's drawn a massive sun using coal dust and an old broom, like a desperate prayer to a god who's forgotten their mailing address. Tom finds a path through an alley that's marginally less packed with snow. Shortcut, they announce triumphantly. Or murder tunnel. Could go either way. You follow anyway. The alley leads to what used to be a delivery yard behind a butcher's. Now it's a field of overturned barrels and crates, all encased in ice. In the far corner, an old coal cart is tipped over, and inside, you blink twice to be sure, there's a frozen sack of oats, real oats. You rush forward with Elsie, slipping on the icy ground, nearly falling on your face. The sack is half ripped, the contents slightly wet but salvageable. She stares at it like it's treasure. It's food! It's fuel! We can boil this! You both carry it between you, arms trembling. It's heavier than it looks, or maybe you're just lighter than you used to be. The others cheer weakly when they see it, and Miss Lillian blesses the sack like it's royalty. You keep moving. Another hour passes, then 2, then you see it, the docks, or what's left of them. Once a tangle of trade and cargo smoke and salt, it's now quiet, eerily so. But people are there, dozens, maybe hundreds, clustered around the skeletal remains of warehouses and shipping offices. Some have built fires in old iron oil drums, Others huddle under makeshift tarps strung from broken masts and signposts. You smell something that makes your mouth water and stomach tighten. Real soup. Thin, sure, but hot and smelled. That's a new sensation. The largest warehouse still standing has a banner strung across the door. Shelter, register at desk. You can't get there fast enough. Inside, the air is damp and thick, but warmer. The floor is lined with straw and flattened crates. There are fires, actual stoves, some barely lit but functional. People sleep side by side, pressed close like matches in a box. The noise is constant, snoring, coughing, whispering. But it sounds like life. You line up, a real desk, a real person. She looks exhausted. Ink-stained fingers and 3 scarves around her neck. Name? She asks. You give it. Tom gives theirs. Elsie gives a look that dares the woman to ask too many questions. She scribbles in a ledger. Group of 10, she confirms. Any injuries? Children? Elderly? All of the above, you say. She glances at the line behind you, then sighs. You'll need to share a corner. Space is short. You'll get 1 blanket per 3 people and 1 hot meal. After that, depends what comes in tomorrow. You nod. Thank you. You're given a corner behind a stack of shipping crates, with 2 small wool blankets and a half loaf of hard bread wrapped in wax paper. There's also a tin cup of stew. Not much, maybe lentils, maybe not. You pass it around, sharing spoonfuls in silence. The children eat first, then the rest of you. Tom licks the spoon like it's made of sugar. Later, someone arrives with hot bricks, fresh from a stove. You nestle them beneath the blankets, and the heat makes people weep openly. Not with noise, just with relief. The kind of tears that don't need a reason. The shelter isn't perfect, it's loud. It smells like exhaustion and damp straw. The toilets are overused. Someone coughs constantly, and you suspect it's not just a cold, but there's heat, there's soup. There are people who greet you without suspicion in their eyes. That night, as you sit against the wall, legs stretched out, the kettle warming by a shared fire, you look around and feel something that's been missing for days. Not comfort, not safety, but margin. Just enough margin between survival and collapse to let your brain wander again. You think about books, about a bath, about the sound of music played on purpose, not just in someone's head. Tom slides beside you, chewing the last bite of biscuit and offering you a corner of the blanket. Think this place will hold? They ask. You stare at the leaking ceiling, the sagging beams. I think it'll hold long enough. They nod. Long enough for what? You don't know, no one does. Maybe you're home for the storm to end. Maybe for the city to remember how to breathe. Maybe just long enough to fall asleep without fearing the roof will cave in. But long enough is all you need. The next morning, something happens that feels almost mythical. Sunlight. Real, actual, blinking through the cloud sunlight. You don't notice it at first. Not until someone in the shelter shouts. Not a scream, not panic, just this startled, breathless, joyous sound. It cuts through the low-level groan of the warehouse like a bell. You blink your way to the open warehouse door, the air still sharp but less biting, and there it is, soft beams of golden light streaming through a break in the clouds, reflecting off snowbanks like glass. It's pale, yes, weak, but it's real. The sky has colour again. Not grey, but something like blue, or at least trying to be. The whole shelter moves as one, stumbling out into the yard like creatures crawling out of hibernation. You all squint upward, eyes watering, skin hungry for the warmth. You feel it on your cheek, a single degree warmer than yesterday, maybe less, but your whole body responds like you've just stepped into a hot bath. Tom turns their face to the sky and announces, I'm sweating, I can feel it. I'm melting like a snowman with ambition. You grin, your lips cracking open from the cold, but you don't care. The sun is back. The world might still be frozen, but something shifted. You can feel it. Elsie joins you, arms crossed, scanning the clouds like she doesn't quite believe it. Could be temporary, she mutters. Storm's tricked us before. Let it trick us, you reply. Just for a minute. Around you, the shelter yard turns into an accidental festival. People sit on crates, blankets draped over their shoulders like cloaks, catching the light on their faces like it's medicine. Children chase each other through the slush, their laughter, scratchy but real. Someone starts a song, just a verse, and others join in softly. It's off-key, mumbled, full of wrong lyrics, still beautiful. The food line runs smoother today. More crates arrived overnight, military stock. labelled in stenciled black letters, dried lentils, oats, salted meat of questionable origin. You help unpack, working beside a woman with cracked knuckles and a voice like gravel. She tells you she used to work in a sewing house, made corsets for rich ladies who couldn't breathe and paid extra for it. Now she stirs soup for strangers. Better job, she shrugs. People appreciate it when they're hungry. Back inside, the shelter feels different. Not warmer, though the bricks by the fires are working better now, but lighter. There's movement, conversations. A toddler near the fire says a full sentence and everyone claps like she's just cured frostbite. And then comes the news. A runner from the post station, an actual messenger in uniform, boots covered in road salt, bursts into the warehouse with a stack of notices. He's red-faced and wild-eyed like he's just sprinted through 4 miles of snow, which he probably has. He unrolls a paper and pins it to the central crate wall. People gather, whisper. You push forward with Tom until you can read the ink. Gas service to be restored within 1 week, weather permitting. You stare at the words, just stare. Your mind trips over the sentence like it's a dream written in capital letters. Gas, heat, cooked food, warm water, light. The crowd erupts, not in cheers, but a collective sound of disbelief, a noise like hope, realizing it's allowed back in the building. Tom reads it twice, then turns to you. 1 week, you nod, if the weather holds. They clutch the kettle on their hip like a baby. She might live to see the good days. You spend the afternoon helping build more fires. There's an effort now to dry everything, blankets, coats, boots, stringing them over crates and ropes like laundry lines. Someone pours water over their hands just to feel the difference between cold and cold that doesn't bite. Even Miss Lillian cracks a smile. She's found a chair someone dragged in and sits in it like it's a throne. I knew I'd outlive this storm, she says, sipping broth. I'm made of gin and spite. No one doubts her. That night you sit with the group, a tighter ring than usual. No one's as bundled. The fire burns steadily, the brick beneath your feet pleasantly warm, and the air no longer feels like an enemy. Tom starts telling stories. Real ones, made-up ones half remembered from books. The one about the woman who married a baker just to get free bread. The one about the rat who learned to ice skate. The one about the 3 brothers who survived winter by hiding in the walls of Buckingham Palace. True story, Tom insists. They still live there. Under the floorboards, eat crumbs from the royal dinner table. You add your own story about how you once tried to cook rice using only candle heat and it ended in something closer to glue. Everyone laughs, even the coughing kid wheezes a chuckle. Then comes the quiet, not solemn, not fearful, just peace. The kind that comes when you've been through the worst, and it didn't kill you. You lie down on your blanket, the ceiling above you drips occasionally, melting icicles. A beautiful sound, like a clock ticking towards spring. You whisper into the dark, not to anyone in particular. We're almost there. And someone answers, maybe Elsie, maybe no one at all. Almost is enough. You believe them, because tomorrow you might see more sun, because tomorrow there might be fire that doesn't come from scraps, because tomorrow there might be gaslight, flickering back to life in streets that forgot what warmth looked like. But tonight, you have a blanket, you have soup in your belly, and you have people. Not much, but enough. The next morning you wake before the others, not from cold, though the shelter is still far from warm, but from light, gentle, stay golden. It spills across the crates, bounces off the kettle's dented lid, illuminates the straw-strewn floor like a silent blessing. You sit up, your breath not fogging quite as much as before. Outside, the snow has stopped. For the first time in what feels like years, it's not falling. Not whispering across the roof or choking the streets or thudding down in great white heaps like punishment. It's just still. You step outside and inhale. The air is sharp, yes, but it carries something new. The faint scent of the river. Salt, mud, rot and boats. Utterly disgusting and absolutely beautiful. It means things are moving again. The docks haven't unfrozen completely, but trickles of water are reappearing beneath the grey crust. You can hear the distant sound of someone hammering. A clatter of crates. Human activity. You walk up the steps, boots crunching on the path that volunteers have spent the past hour clearing, and stand beside a fire barrel. It's been rebuilt with new coal, real coal, from a shipment that arrived just before dawn. A man in uniform nods to you, eyes red-rimmed but alert. You from the warehouse group? He asks. You nod. You've done well, he says simply. You held on. Held on, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Not heroism, not grandeur, just grip strength, mental and the physical. You held on. Back inside, the group is stirring. Elsie's already up, crouched near a stove and gently rotating a pot of oats. We've got proper rations today, she says, voice low and steady. Oats, beans, even a bit of dried fruit. Tom emerges from the blankets with his bed hair like a hedgehog and squints at the pot. Is that raisins or mice? Don't push your luck, Elsie mutters, but she's smiling. The child, with the worst cough, finally eats a full bowl of food without stopping. Miss Lillian drinks her morning tea, real tea, brewed from actual leaves, and hums a tune that might be a lullaby or might be the national anthem in the wrong key. The light grows stronger by the hour. Volunteers, actual ones, not desperate survivors, arrive with clipboards and spare boots. A nurse shows up with a box of salve and a bag of bandages, asking about frostbite, infection, and who hasn't been seen yet. You raise your hand, so does Tom. Half the shelter does, honestly. She nods and gets to work. When it's your turn, she unwraps your foot and frowns. Could have been worse, she says, dabbing your skin with something cool and tingly. Could still be, but won't be, you ask? She hesitates, then nods. You made it. That night they run the gas line test. Ooh. You all watch, clustered near the far wall, as a worker in a heavy coat turns a wrench on the main valve. The hiss is faint but unmistakable. A small pilot lamp flutters. Then, with a soft pop, a blue flame. You'd have thought someone lit the sky on fire. People clap. Some cheer. Some just start crying, which is somehow louder. The first burner is designated for soup. The second for boiling water. The third goes unused because no one can believe you get more than two. You stand near the flame with your hands out. The heat is immediate. Real. Not from burning paper, not from stolen chair legs or old ledgers or candle stubs. This is clean blue heat. You don't realise how much you've been shivering until you finally stop. Later, the gas lights along the outer wall flicker to life. Tiny globes of golden warmth. You stare at them like a child seeing stars for the first time. Tom counts them under their breath. 1, 2, 3, 8 in total. 10 now, by tomorrow, says a volunteer nearby. You walk the shelter that evening and realise what's different. No one is huddled in silence anymore. People are talking, not whispering, talking, conversations about tomorrow, about what needs fixing, who needs a job, who lost what, who might be going home soon, if home still exists. You hear laughter, honest laughter, not the brittle kind that masks panic. Real humour, real energy. Elsie sets up a small notice board and writes in charcoal, needs, clean water, more coal, bandages, baby shoes. Someone adds underneath, found, shoe, no baby. It's not funny, but everyone laughs anyway. Even the birds come back. You notice them perched on the roof beams, pecking at crumbs, cocking their heads as if shocked to find you all still alive. You envy them. But also feel oddly equal to them now, survivors, winged or not. You sit down with your group, your tiny army of scavengers and storytellers, and pass around a pot of hot soup made from real ingredients. It tastes like everything you ever wanted. Warmth, salt, stability, even joy. Tom sets the kettle down beside you and sighs. She made it. She, you ask? They look at you like you're mad. Of course she's a she. Look at her curves. You snort and clink your tin cup against theirs. To the kettle. To us, Tom replies. We're basically immortal now. You lean back against the wall. The straw beneath you is clean. The air doesn't bite anymore, and the ceiling doesn't look like it's going to fall in. You made it through the snowstorm, through the freezing, through the hunger, through the dark. You lost things, yes. A home, a building. Dignity a few times. You walked past people you couldn't save. You saw the worst of the weather, and maybe the worst of yourselves, but you're still here. You're warm now, and the city is breathing again. You don't remember falling asleep, only waking up. But this time the cold doesn't drag you back, the fire isn't out, the light doesn't flicker with threat. There's warmth, not just in the room, but in your skin. That deep cellular kind that says, you're safe, not forever, but for now. You stretch out beneath your patched blanket, kettle by your side, and listen to the quiet hum of the shelter. Steady breaths, soft footsteps, the faint clink of tin against tin as someone pours morning tea. Outside, the streets have softened. The snow, once a punishing blanket of silence, is melting into slush and mud and rebirth. You can almost smell spring, faint, earthy, waiting in the wings. Tom waves from across the shelter holding a slice of warm barley bread like it's a trophy. Miss Lillian is playing cards with someone who might be a priest or just a very clean con man. Elsie is talking to a volunteer about helping rebuild the wash house. There's talk of jobs, of windows, of future. It's wild. And you? You've survived the Victorian snowstorm without gas. Without much of anything, really, just wit, scraps and people. The world didn't make it easy. It never does. But you adapted. You scavenged, traded, burned everything flammable. And when all else failed, you held on tighter than the cold could pry you loose. And now the city is waking with you. So take a breath, a long one, let it fill your chest, and for once not hurt. You've earned the exhale. The soft bed, the moment, you're warm, you're alive, you're not going anywhere.